Visit atwsource.com to take the next step along your path of awakening. You're listening to Awakening Truth, Worldwide Radio, and its network of radio shows. Presented by the teachers of Awakening Truth Worldwide, where spirituality, truth, and consciousness collide.
Welcome to A Guiding Light. I'm Dr. Joseph Marra, and I'll be your host for the next 2 hours or so. Tonight, I have my lovely girlfriend, Vanessa Da Silva, as my co-host this evening. And we have a great lineup tonight, another doubleheader. Before we begin, I'd like to wish all the moms out there a happy Mother's Day. And don't forget to keep Mother Earth in your hearts and your prayers. In the first hour, we'll be joined by Dr. Nick and Reverend Linda Martin. And the second hour, we will have Tolec from the Andromeda Council. So, first up, Dr. Nick and Reverend Linda Martin and I will discuss ego versus spirit and the importance of blending these aspects of ourselves rather than nullifying the ego altogether. What does transformation or transcendence actually mean? Does everyone and everything go through this process? Tune in as we discuss the possibilities. Dr. Nick and Reverend Linda Martin, welcome to A Guiding Light.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, Joe. Happy to be here.
Great to have you guys back on here. Actually, it's our first time on this particular radio station, and I also want to give Vanessa the opportunity to say hello.
Hi.
Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Vanessa.
So, how have you guys been there in Pittsburgh?
Oh, we're doing well. Cold, chilly day here, rainy day today, but everything's going well, and we are promoting our new book and moving along. Wonderful.
Okay, so well, let's start off with telling the listeners who may not know you a brief description of who you are and how you guys got to where you are today.
Joe, for your listeners, I'm a licensed psychologist in Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I've worked in the clinical, university, public school, and private practice settings over the past 30 years. And while I've done that work, I've had a chance to work serve as a therapist, diagnostician, educator, and consultant. And each of these roles in different settings has really exposed me to thousands upon thousands of egos. And these individuals that I've had a chance to work with and meet probably have taught me more about ego than any book could have done.
And Joe, I'm an ordained minister and a doctor of metaphysics. I'm a spiritual counselor and spiritual healer. I have a healing ministry, Dove of Light Healing Ministry, in southwestern PA, where I offer sessions in person and by phone and a variety of workshops and classes. And in the work that I do and have done through counseling and healing sessions, I've seen the ego at work. I realize the importance of our vision and message that we're putting forth in our book, Ego and Spirituality. And quite a few years ago, Nick and I saw how the work that we each do needed to merge together to assist humanity in a greater way. So we were, in a sense, each other's teachers as we began to see and learn how necessary it was for our clients and for others to learn about their egos, how this can affect their desire and ability to grow spiritually. And we actually came to see this process of ego spiritualism as a big part of the evolutionary path that we need to move into at this time.
Yeah, it's such a great symbiotic relationship, and ever since I met you guys years ago, I always thought that you complemented one another, and it's great to see that you have come together to write a book. So speaking of ego and spirituality, I think Vanessa has a few questions to ask you, and I'm going to let her
Just for your listeners, could you define what you consider to be ego spiritualism?
Ego spiritualism is a term that we began to develop and use over 5 years ago. It's rooted in the belief that was shaped by our professional and personal experiences that we all have the potential to experience a healthy and imbalanced ego, which really serves to complement our divinity. Ego spiritualism is a consciousness, and it reflects emergence and a synergy of our humanity and our divinity rather than polarizing them. Our healthy, imbalanced, yet imperfect ego is actually working in concert with our divine self.
And this consciousness involves not only a spiritual awakening, but an egoic awakening as well. And many people don't even understand that the ego needs to wake up and understand its role. This egoic awakening involves transitioning from ego unconscious to ego consciousness by coming to better know what the ego is, finding your own specific ego, as not all egos are alike. We are all very different, and that is in part because we do have different types of egos. And so we can bring it into a balanced state, bringing it into balance and harmony where it's needed regarding its power and flexibility and vulnerability. And ego spiritualism is I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
We were just saying it's not a religion, it's not a dogma, it's the emergence together of our humanity and our divinity.
Wonderful. I have a question. A lot of people are like, are the things that we teach doable for each individual person on the planet? So are there people out there such as yourself that, and I'll just go into this question to make it easier, have there been conflicts within your own relationship, marriage, due to each of your own personal views?
Absolutely, Joe. I think we speak to that in the book when we talk about relationships and love and things of that kind, that when people each have their own unique ego, and they often differ according to power or flexibility or vulnerability. And we bring them into the world and life we live, and that includes the close relationships that we are experiencing. And as a result, there can be times when there are conflicts that need to be worked through and resolved in order for two people to merge and grow closer together.
Early on in our marriage, we were ego unconscious, and we were much younger and still had so much to learn and understand about ourselves as well as each other. And, this is all part of the learning experience. And many people fail to understand that we are mirrors for each other in learning about what we need to know that comes from our partner or other people in our lives. And so, as we grew and evolved in our own ways, we began to understand and see so that we could help to move into a more balanced place with ourselves.
I read the book and I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was really practical because a lot of spiritual books almost completely ignore the power that the ego has, or they push people into completely dissolving the ego. And really, there is no way as a human on earth you can fully dissolve your ego. So I found that your book was very practical in working with the ego, understanding your own ego, and using that as a foundation to guide you into growing spiritually. But one question I did have was, there is a process to understanding the ego, and do you feel that once a person has understood their ego, do they transcend beyond that, or is it a constant, ongoing process to continually go back and balance the ego?
I believe that what occurs is that over time you are able to look, well, first of all, you start out by getting a better understanding of what ego is. I think what's been said about ego has been very limited, and limited in the sense that it's primarily stressed the power of one's ego and how it's being played out in their life experiences. And what we've done is say there's more to it than just the power part. It's the flexibility part and the vulnerability part So part of the steps that are involved in growing and reaching or moving toward a deeper level of consciousness, it begins to understand, well, exactly what ego is. And then you begin to work at understanding how you are living your ego. And in the book, as well as the previous book called The Ego Unmasked, we talk about these like key life areas that are like mirrors, like close relationships and achievement and conflict and adversity and so on, where you can actually see how your ego is being lived in terms of its degree of power, flexibility, or vulnerability. And you become a student of you, awareness of yourself becomes to be more pronounced. And then as part of the growth process, we believe that there's something that people all require, self included, something called mental medicine, to help with the egoic awakening and to stay awake. And that gets into basically understanding part of how you're living your ego, as well as the non-reality-based thinking that people often utilize unconsciously in their lives that kind of distance themselves from truth and their spiritual awakening. As you cultivate that and you grow, it's hard to go back to sleep again. It's hard to go back to sleep egoically speaking, because you see yourself, you know yourself more deeply, and you also obviously are awakening spiritually, and that also helps you to basically stay awake.
Yeah, a lot of people, I don't want to say a lot, I don't want to generalize, but some of the authors that are out there, as Vanessa said, try to get you to actually dissolve the ego, but when you look at the human being or the human condition or the human experience, that's part of the experience, the mind, body, spirit, and the emotional. And when you cut one of those portions out altogether, it don't make sense to me to do that, or I don't know quite how you would, or if you're out of balance, and this could go both ways in my opinion, I guess you could live this life of a spiritual path and be kind of out of your body, so to speak, and be in these higher awarenesses, but then what would the point of the human experience be? Because you, outside of your physicalness, you go back to a heavenly place, a blissful place, or wherever that is, and you're actually here to live out this human experience. So to nullify the ego, I think that takes away from your human experience.
Well, I agree with you, Joe. And we have this channel, each one of us, that we move through. We have the 7 aspects of who we are in allowing us to be God's expression here on earth. And the ego is part of, the mental body that we work with. And so it's I don't know if it could be dissolved completely. And that's not what we're here to do, but we are here to merge in harmony all aspects of who we are. And, another thing that has hit me with how it's been said to try to dissolve the ego, move beyond the ego, it's kind of implying to us as humans that there's a negativity to us, because it's something bad, it's something negative, it's something you don't want to have. Well, that's part of who you are. Right. And, you're kind of telling somebody there's something wrong with you, get rid of it. Right. And people just cannot do that. And so it's right there, it's implying something that's not healthy. And we need to come to an understanding of what this is doing and the guilt and unworthiness that it could be, imposing upon people with this.
Yeah. Yeah, that brings to the surface some other things. We do live in this 3-dimensional world, and there is this duality that we live in. And as I always say, up, down, hot, cold, good, bad. And the good and the bad, we all have that internally. We have a choice what aspect of that ego to live out. And sometimes whenever you are living out maybe the negative side or a lower vibrational side, you're helping other people see themselves. And, so there's more benefits to just being than to worry about nullifying who you are. And, of course, we try to be the best that we can be. And what is not talked about a lot of times is balancing everything out. And instead of trying to get get rid of one, or being one side more than the other. And with that said, I think Vanessa has an important question here too.
As you're exploring your own ego and understanding your ego type and working with it, what is the process of using mental medicine to balance the ego? What exactly does that mean?
Well, in the book, The Ego Unmasked, and also in this current book, Ego and Spirituality, I discuss and describe what it looks like when a person is beginning to live power issues, whether it's higher ego power or lower ego power, or flexibility issues, being a person who might have low flexibility, someone who may be very prejudiced against other individuals, and so on. Just some examples there. And the kind of thinking that's going on inside there, as well as when people maybe live too much flexibility and really make no distinction between the things that may be true and those which are untrue. And then also with regard to vulnerability, we talk about higher ego vulnerability, a person who I think I lived very much like when I was much younger, as well as people with lower ego vulnerability. And we describe what that looks like and the thinking that sometimes that goes on in a person's mind when they're living that kind of ego imbalance. And then we talk about the reality-based thinking that one can work with to see the difference between what they may be thinking versus what is the reality. In the book, we talk about sometimes when people in close relationships have high ego power, they tend to control the relationship. They tend to dominate the relationship with the thinking that I know better, I know more, I'm smarter, we have to always do the right thing, without realizing the types of thinking that goes on in that kind of thinking can actually not be true. But they don't know it's true. They think it is true, and they live it, and then it damages the relationship over time. So it's about becoming more familiar about, again, as we're kind of repeating myself, but what the ego is, how I'm living it, where the thinking is it's going on, and what maybe the reality-based thinking is that would be more helpful and healthy and bring me to a place of peace, and other things we talk about with regard to what ego spiritualism looks like when you're actually living it.
Right. So the book that you have, I have some questions for you, but before I do you want to talk a little bit about the book? And I believe you're co-authors in this, and maybe talk a little bit about it and where people can find it, and what is your website that people could go to?
Sure. Yes, we did co-write the book. We brought in our own aspects. Nick is a psychologist coming from working with the ego, for so many years. So coming from his perspective, and me working more on the spiritual path with people and seeing how the ego can sometimes, interfere with somebody on their spiritual path, or how they may move so far along on their spiritual path, and then the ego, if it's not dealt with, if it's not, healing is not done as needs to be, then the ego can just pull somebody right down. And I've seen this happen many times. So it's bringing our views together, our understandings together, our own personal, what we've experienced through our life, and putting it together in a book. And you can get the book. Our website is egoandspirituality.com. The book is also available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and BalboaPress.com.
Joe, I just wanted to add that part of the motivation for me, aside from the opportunity to work with Linda in putting together our work, is the perception that the vast majority of people outside are living in an egoically unconscious state of being, and that will have tremendous negative impact upon their ability to grow spiritually, because they're not really in touch with their humanity. Now, when I say that, I think it's really important to indicate that fundamentally we believe everybody is a good, strong, and intelligent person. What happens is that their unconscious ego exercises a great deal of power and influence in their life unknowingly, and it begins to be played out in things like achievement. I've seen so many people who don't achieve in as much as they could in their lives, or people who are fearful of achieving, or people who are working to overachieve and are driven by fear to achieve when they don't have to do that. And in many of the other areas of that we talk about, in both of the books. And so for me, it was a matter of seeing something that I thought wasn't being addressed in a way that could make it more helpful and palatable for the vast majority of people. I was one of those persons, and Linda was one of those persons, and we can look back on our lives and see the times within our own life when we were living that ego unconsciousness to our own detriment. And as we say in the book, we talked about looking at our relationship has basically always been good, but when we looked at our life, we said our life was better than we were, and that we needed to work and grow and develop within ourselves, and it began with getting a better grasp and understanding of how we were living ego in our own lives.
Okay, great. So that leads me into this next question, which how does educating your clients differ in each of your careers? I mean, I assume that because you're both having different careers and you have different clients, the approach may be a little bit different, or you might come in with a different angle. Or do you actually, educate your clients the same way?
Well, when I work with clients, usually we're working in a healing capacity, and this can be many layers, within. Each one of us has had many experiences, many situations in our lives. We've had hurts, traumas, various things that can affect us in many ways and can affect the ego. And so moving through the layers of healing is part of what I work with somebody in helping them to awaken spiritually and to see who they really are, and also helping them to come into an understanding that their humanity and their divinity can merge together as one. It's not a separate thing. They can bring all aspects of themselves together, and they can love all aspects of themselves. And the shadow and the light in each one of us is just as important.
Joe, what I would add is that when we look at the individual we're working with, they maybe comprise different audiences. One would maybe be the layperson audience, and sometimes those persons may not at the moment be as invested in making growth happen on the spiritual path, but in their own personal life, things that are more connected directly to the 10 key life areas we talk about. Others are mental health practitioners, social workers, counselors, therapists, psychologists, who, because they work with lots of people at the center of which their ego is affecting their life, need to have a broader perspective in serving those, the persons they work with. And then the metaphysician practitioners, who we believe by having a better familiarity with the egoistic energies that are at work in the life of their client, can be of benefit to them and helping them to work and help make that energy more healthy, and again, a complement to their spiritual energies.
I have a question for each of you. Nick, as a psychologist and, dealing with clients who, like you said, may be there for mental issues or counseling that may be related to the ego and not necessarily spirituality, do you ever find that you use spiritual guidance or give them spiritual guidance? And then on the flip side for you, Linda, do you find that when you are healing clients spiritually, do you ever describe the ego type to make them look at their own egos and understand it from that aspect?
Well, I'll start. I think, yes, there are times when it is appropriate. You kind of have to know who your audience is and what they're wanting, and I think part of it is making sure that they don't misinterpret you as attempting to moral or religiously re-educate them or do something of that nature, that they are making that clear distinction that this is not any type of religiously oriented thing as much as it is a consciousness thing linked to spirituality. Even in my own teaching at this point, I teach a course in developmental psychology, and that stresses primarily the development from conception to human death from in areas such as the physical development and cognitive development and social emotional development. And I've added in the spiritual side of things just because I understand the larger picture of what's involved in our lives, and I think it would be somewhat neglectful to at least not acknowledge that that is a part of it. And I find that many of my students are that resonates with them, that they do believe there's more than just the traditionally oriented things. But one has to kind of walk, a little bit lightly in some cases.
And in my work, yes, I do refer to the ego at times in working with a client, especially if I can see specifically what's going on, because sometimes I have found that just bringing awareness into play, in one particular area or a large area can help somebody to understand more about themselves. And so whenever, many people can get caught in cycles within their lives, getting caught in repeating patterns and habits over and over and over, not understanding why they can never be in a peaceful place. And if they can understand what they're working with and, what it is that keeps pulling them in this direction, which is usually the ego, and once they can see that, then, maybe they can start to work in a new way with the ego. They can start to train or teach the ego. And that's what we all have to do in order to bringing the ego into a balanced place. It's coming to know what the ego is, how we can begin to talk to it, how we can begin to teach our ego what we need and learn from it why it's doing what it's doing. So, yes, I do, use these, and I have recommended Nick's first book, The Ego Unmasked, to quite a few of my clients, seeing that, it could benefit them in understanding more about themselves.
It seems like there's a separation in the teachings that we all go through. And what I mean by that is in traditional medicine or psychology, on that end, it's more about the ego mind, at least the traditional teaching. And on spirituality, I think it's more spiritual-based. However, I think it's a little easier to understand that there's an ego aspect on that end. But I really think that this new book that you guys have out would really benefit everybody involved. In other words, if all the spiritual people or educators would read it, I think it would benefit their clients and it would help them help their clients. And the same thing with psychology, because, we're quite guarded in the medical model of bringing in spirituality in many cases because we're fearful of litigation or people not understanding where you're coming from, as Nick was saying. And I really think that if we would put this into the educational system, it would help in leaps and bounds, so to speak.
It would definitely be beneficial if it could come into play in that way. It's understanding that we first are spiritual beings. We've got caught up in the illusion of living through our egoic self, and then we come to believe that this is our reality. And when this can be understood, which so many people are fearful of it in a lot of ways, and mainly because they don't understand that we are spiritual beings.
Right.
And it's the illusion that we believe that we are something other than that we get caught up in. And that's where, the schools and other places that you've mentioned kind of, move from.
Right, absolutely. Okay, it's around, like almost 7:30 here. So how about we open up the phone lines, and if there's any listeners that want to call in, the call-in number is 323-679-0927. If you have any questions, please call in. In the meantime, we talked a little bit about relationships. How would this affect other aspects of daily living, such as one's employment? How does balancing these two aspects of ourselves assist in say, one's employment or other aspects of their life other than relationships?
Well, I think one of the areas has to do with achievement and how one views achievement, and vocational success is part of that area. And sometimes people get caught up in trying to achieve in their work and in their career, and they begin to neglect other pieces of their life, pieces like family, pieces like their health, pieces like stress, and so on. And it isn't necessary, and sometimes they're also caught up in the material wealth that one might accrue as a result of achievement. Also, that oftentimes fear is behind the achievement effort. I mentioned that earlier, and again, I think it was behind my own experiences as a younger person. Instead of my achievement effort being fueled and motivated primarily by love, it was more so motivated by fear. And I did well. I did well athletically, and I did well academically, and I did well in other parts of my life. But when I looked at it, I really saw that fear was such a big, impetus. And that was what I referred to earlier when I said my life or what was surrounding me was probably better than I was. And I think that happens for a lot of people, and that's not good for one's body, obviously, because we absorb in our bodies what's going on, and it also may cause some disconnection with regard to our working spiritually and understanding and knowing God, because we may incorporate that view or understanding of our spirituality with elements of fear.
And people, when they move into the workplace, as Nick was saying, moving through fear, I have to provide, I have to put food on the table, I have to have a roof over my head and my family, and they believe that this is all upon their shoulders. And again, as I said just a little while ago, the illusion of what our ego brings to us, we believe is our reality. And the reality is that the abundance that is available to each and every one of us, it is this source that comes to us from the source of all things. It's understanding that this source of love is within us. It's within the world. This force of love is within all beings. And it's not about, the fact that we have to, do these things or else. It's understanding that it is available because it is our birthright. And when we can move into this understanding and we begin to, move through our lives in a more peaceful way, in a more, in a way that's not fear-filled, and, we don't have feelings of separateness then. Because when we go to work and we're feeling that we have to, or else, then we may feel so separated from those around us. Because when we live in fear, we do tend to feel separated.
Yeah, I know we're talking about ego and spirit, and the book is all about those two aspects, but since we're on the air here, and I was just curious, what other aspects of humanity do each of you look upon when counseling or doing healing work? Do you strictly adhere to ego versus spirituality, or do you obviously look at the other parts of humanity? And this goes to each of you.
Well, yes, I think I stated earlier, we are all expressions of God here on earth, and we have many aspects of who we are that, allow us to be this expression. Unfortunately, many people aren't aware that what they do is an expression of God. And if we become aware of that, then we can start to take responsibility and, move in that way. And so the various aspects, they can be connected to our chakra system and our, where we stand in the world, our emotional well-being, our, our expression, our creativity, our connection to the divine, and, how are we living and moving through these things. And with many people, some of these things are blocked or even unknown within themselves. And so it's helping people to awaken in all aspects as to who they are and how they can strengthen each aspect within them so that they can move in a complete way in being expressions of God here on earth.
I would just add that when I think about your question, I'm thinking about the practical aspects of our life, and our life story. And our life story is comprised of many of those things I referred to as the 10 key life areas, whether it's how we deal with and work with people that we deal with day in, day out, our close relationships with the people that are more involved within our life, our relationship with ourself, which we refer to it as your self-esteem. Probably the most important relationship you might have with a human being is that one with yourself, and achievement, conflict, stress, all these things that people talk about that make up the issues that maybe affect their lives often come back to what ego is about. And so what we try to do is help them understand, and it's more or less a classroom, that they're the student and the subject. And to me, and this is what people have been teaching me over 30 years, is, James Carville had It's the Economy, Stupid, back in 92, and I would say it's the ego, quote, stupid, because it's really the thing that really is playing itself out in these various life areas, although people, again, due to their ego unconsciousness, are not directly aware of it.
I have a question going back to the process of writing this book and just the information that you came up with and wrote about. What was it like to co-create and write the book together, coming from two very different ends of the spectrum? What was the process like?
Oh, Vanessa,
now you really got down to it.
Oh, we're not going to go there. No. No, good question. Nick and I, you guys know us, and we're both very different personalities. We've made it through 34 years of being married, and part of that is respecting each other and respecting who we are and how each of us works, because we both have very different working styles. And so, it was kind of, as we were putting the book together, Nick is very disciplined and his daily routines and that sort of thing. And I'm pretty much the opposite. I just I let spirit move me, kind of. But, we made it work. And, as we just, brought our stuff together, it wasn't like we sat down, across the table from each other and wrote this book. We wrote it as we wrote it in our own way, and in our own time, and then we brought it together. And our daughter also, our daughter is an editor, and she really helped us to put it together in a beautiful way.
I would just add that whenever there was something we wrote, we would sort of run it through each other. We would vet it to make sure that it really was consistent with regard to what we jointly believed, or if that wasn't the case, we would not include it, perhaps. And I think that's sometimes there's a tension there, because you might think, well, I really have an idea here that I really want to see play out in the book, but the other person might not see it that way. And it worked out. I mean, there were times clearly where Linda said, I don't agree with that idea, or I don't agree with that thought, or I don't find that compatible with what, I understand. And so that was a challenge at times, but it was I felt resolved pretty well most of the time.
Yeah, we had no screaming matches or anything like that. We kept our egos in check.
That's probably what made it possible. Really, I'm serious. Whenever you have two, people working on something that's really important and they feel passion towards, it sometimes is difficult. You hear about musicians and other people in different fields. Working together is really challenging because you get so into your ego and unconsciously. For us, I think it was being aware that could be an issue, and that allowed us to kind of keep it in check and work together.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Right.
Do you guys think that there's another book left in you before we all check out of this world?
Joe, that's an interesting question, and I kind of, for myself, it goes back and forth, because I'm thinking of the book, the first two books, as basically parts of the consciousness path, with the Ego Unmasked as being the book that was meant to be focusing in on the movement from our ego unconsciousness into ego consciousness. Mm-hmm. And then this book, Ego and Spirituality, was about moving us along from ego consciousness into ego spiritualistic consciousness, in which we worked and recognized the joint healthy work of our humanity with our divinity. The next one would naturally be the movement beyond the point of ego spiritualism into spiritual consciousness. There have been many great books already written about that particular area. And I would say Eckhart Tolle, Wayne Dyer, David Hawkins, and other people who have talked about ego with regard to the spiritual side of their work, and many others have done quite well. So I don't know if there's anything from myself that I think I would offer necessarily about that. What we do believe is, even though we have fundamentally different ideas about ego from what we believe they are saying about ego, what we do think is that our work can actually help more people to reach and understand more of the spiritual side of their message, which is really quite good.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Okay, so something we haven't gotten into yet. Do either of you feel that this particular time or year that we're living in has any increased significance or value for humanity?
I think so. I think that in some respects the economical downturn is an opportunity similar to maybe that which was experienced at the time of the Depression and the beginning of World War II, when people had to get in touch with what their true needs were relative to their wants. One of the most difficult challenges for many young people over the last 25 to 30 years has been a consumer-driven industry and commercial industry that has really blurred that, and as I create a lot of difficulty. They've tapped into the ego unconsciousness tremendously, and they've created unneeded wants. And a lot of people don't know what it would be like to live without a cell phone, or don't know what it would be like to live without 350 channels on their television set, or other things that are just constructed wants that aren't really wants. I mean, they're constructed needs, but they're not needs; they're just wants. So I think that it's going to be ultimately a good thing. It's going to help people get in touch with what they really need and allow them to understand themselves and not be as sidetracked by maybe more egoically related things.
We're also moving into a whole new energy. As we're moving, as everybody knows, 2012 thing, which we're already in. It's not a specific date that's going to happen, but it's the shifting and changing of our Mother Earth, many things in the universe, as well as our own, physical and etheric bodies responding to this energy change. And this is part of our evolution. And part of our evolution is the understanding of our own consciousness and understanding that the consciousness within us, is what brings about the changes. It's not for each of us to sit and wait for something outside of ourselves to occur, but it's understanding where it really begins within our own consciousness and where things truly do come from. It's not through the ego, but it is through the spirit, through our divine connection, that our abundance, our wealth, are all that we are, where it truly comes from. And that's the evolutionary process that we are moving into more strongly.
Yeah, I really think it's important with a discussion of this book with the cohesion, so to speak, of the ego and spirituality. As we said earlier, if you get rid of the one, like the ego, a lot of people, how should I say? What I always say is thought becomes reality. And what you think, you manifest before yourself. And the more that you think about one thing at one time, the more focus or the intent you have there, it becomes your reality. So if you totally get rid of ego, it doesn't, I don't see how that's possible. And,
how can it be? Yes.
Another thing I'd like to mention about that is this is important to bring people to an awareness, because as you're saying, the ego unconscious, people just don't realize, the wise man knows what he does not know. So a lot of people that are out there just don't simply know. It hasn't been presented to them. It hasn't been taught. It hasn't been on the media and all the other places that you would get this information to wake up, so to speak. It's just not there. And that's why I think it's important to blend the two of these together, and I really think there's a lot of people that read this are going to have an aha moment.
Joe, one of the thoughts in regards to ego, and this is maybe because you have a background in biology and medicine, is if you looked in the old days when they had, I don't know what the microscopes are like nowadays, but they used to be when I was in science class many years ago, 3 different levels of magnification. You had the 50 times, you had the 200 times, and then you had the 1,000 times. And I think what we've been doing up to this point, prior to the work that we put forth, at least with regard to ego, is that we've had the minimal magnification of looking at what ego is, maybe just through the 50 magnification, the old power idea of what ego is. And what we've done is we've talked about the flexibility and the vulnerability aspects of ego in addition to power. When you put them together and work through it, you begin to see more and understand more about how humans are and how they're living, and that turns into awareness and of oneself and as well as others. You're probably familiar. You've seen the book. The Ego Unmasked is 758 pages. That's because humans are very complex, and ego is a very complex entity. It's not simplistic. And different people have different egos. And I was thinking the other day about the Buddhist term dukkha for suffering, and the book in effect is describing the diversity of suffering that humans live, and we don't all live the same kind of suffering, but we need to understand it, whether it's more dramatic or more subtle, in order for us to better move toward working with it and growing it. And I think that's what we're trying to do, at least from the egoic side of it. I'm hoping to bring that to the table.
Great. Linda?
Right. Moving into this understanding of who we are in all aspects, and seeing that we do create our reality through our beliefs, and the unconscious ego has no idea of what it is creating. But when we can wake the ego up to work with us, to merge with us, the ego can be our driving force. The people that are unaware that, they are moving through their life unconsciously don't really understand that they are bringing into their lives that which is occurring. And so they may continue to live through the cycles, the patterns, the things that keep occurring over and over that they're not happy with and they don't understand why. And hopefully they can understand that this is why. When you keep moving through with a certain belief pattern, a certain understanding, a certain cycle that you're constantly living over and over again, this is going to create your reality. Right. And we are so much more than that. We really are. The potential we have is unlimited. Right.
You're reminded me of course, me counseling various people in my own practice, but how many people have attracted the same person over and over in a relationship to teach them something about themselves, or whatever the purpose is, or whatever their thought is, they continually, in fact, many people, attract such a similar person. They have the same body shape, the same first name, and on and on and on. So, if that isn't proof enough for people, you just open your eyes and take a look around.
Right.
Okay. So let's see, what time do we got here? It's about 10 till. How about you guys give out your website again, if you will, and how the listeners can get a hold of your book?
Certainly. Our website is egoandspirituality.com. I also have a website, lindammartin.net, and the book is available on Amazon.com, BalboaPress.com, and BarnesandNoble.com.
Great.
And the EgoUnmasked.com. We forgot that one.
Oh, okay.
That's the first book.
Yeah, great. Now, I don't know if you guys want to talk a little bit. Maybe you could tell the listeners, Nick, if do you strictly practice at the school, or do you have any private hours? And Linda, maybe you could talk a little bit about what you do aside from this book. I know you spoke briefly about it, but I know you also have spiritual get-togethers, conferences, or lectures. You also do healing work. So if either one of you want to go first.
Well, Joe, thank you for the opportunity. Mainly I teach 4 classes at California University of Pennsylvania, and both the in-class and the on-class activities, along with my consulting work with the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation in Pennsylvania. That keeps me busy in addition to writing books. So at this point, beyond that, I'm not really doing anything else because I think that the work that we're doing both together, this is ultimately what we would hope to move forward into our life's work, is to work together and bring out this message and this vision, which we think could be of most service to the people.
Right. And as I mentioned earlier, I do have a healing ministry, Dove of Light Healing Ministry, and I do offer individual sessions. I offer spiritual counseling, intuitive readings, healing sessions. I work with sound healing is one of the big things that I do work with clients. I also offer groups, and I have gatherings here, classes, and workshops, but I also travel. I do workshops with Nick and I, we're putting these out with the ego and spirituality, but I also do workshops with my sister, Reverend Bonnie Hughes. She's located in New York, and we travel around at times doing workshops and classes. And I have phone sessions available as well. My sister Bonnie and I also offer teleclasses every couple of months, which is by phone. So no matter where you are, it's easy to receive a session and get in touch with us. And you can get in touch with me through my website, lindammartin.net.
Okay, great. So if there's any listeners that are out there that want to bring you to their town, so to speak, if they would create some type of a program, depending on the number of people, I guess you guys could work that out. Or are you open to do that at this point?
Yes, Joe. There's a page on our website that talks about presentations, and it lists, our interest in doing those, and if the organization is willing to bring us in, and it spells it out. So I'm not going to go into the details here, but they can look at that and see if that's a viable option for them to pursue with us. We'd welcome that.
All right, great. Are you guys finding that more and more people are wanting change or transition right now?
Yeah, more and more people are, but actually more and more people are feeling the change and transitioning that's occurring, within themselves and within the world. Some of them are, moving with it well, and some of them are wondering what's going on, depending on where they are and who they are and what they have to work with within themselves.
I also think that it has something to do with sometimes people don't know what question to ask. They're sort of feeling there's something that needs to be done, or they would like something more in their life, but they don't know what to do to go about that. And so they're not really clear as to where they need to look. And we kind of are offering something that says, well, the place to look is within, but where do you look within? Because the universe of our mind is quite large, and we try to point them in a direction that can help them find themselves, and then as a result of that, all the other things are more likely to fall into place. Yeah.
Are you seeing any differences in your current careers working with people that you may have not seen before? Like what you just said, Nick, I mean, like 20 years ago, would you be open to talk about spirituality compared to today?
Well, I don't think I was as far along in my own personal development to feel comfortable. I've really spent a lot of time listening to scholars talk about the history of philosophy, both from the Eastern and Western traditions, different religious viewpoints, and it's been fascinating because in some different ways, shapes, and forms, other speakers, whether it's Jesus or Buddha, and along the path, even Muhammad, the term jihad is not just about trying to represent or struggle in representing God, but it's also the struggle against oneself. And that was really a reflection of that issue with one's own self, one's own ego. And so it's been interesting just to see along this long term for the past 3,000 years, probably going back as far as Buddha, that they've really been kind of speaking to this. but there was a need for maybe a 20th century, 21st century representation of what does that mean, to bring it into a tighter focus so that people could see more of what that was about. So it's not like we're reinventing the wheel, so to speak, completely. What we're really doing is sort of refining it.
We feel that what we're saying really complements Jesus' message. In fact, in our book, our last chapter, it reflects upon Jesus, his teachings. Jesus never actually wrote, things down himself, but what was remembered, what was said, what was taught regarding his teachings, we feel just go hand in hand with what we're saying. The word ego did not exist back at that time, as far as we know. But for the changes that people are going through, when they can listen to where their heart is leading them and trust in that, then they will begin to awaken. And once we awaken, then we're awakening to what we're here for, to what we've been created for. We move into our passion and our purpose.
Yeah. So do you see different people waking up at different times is probably what's going on? I mean, that's what I'm personally seeing.
Yeah, definitely. And there's certain things that may hold somebody back, whereas another person just, they're ready to go. So it all depends on what we're carrying within us, how much healing needs to be done. We all need to, inner child healing, emotional healing, whatever it is, forgiveness. Forgiveness is a big thing that people need to understand and how to move through, and I do work with people in that. So, yeah, it's a process, and there are layers that we all have to learn about within ourselves.
Yeah, would you say gratitude has something to do with it as well?
Oh, my goodness, yes. The more we can live and walk in gratitude, it really helps us to awaken.
Joe, there's that one part of one chapter deals with the 4 great gifts, and these are the gifts that we have all received, that when there's the gift of life, creating life, the gift of God within, and the gift of eternal life. And yet these are the kind of things that when people are egoically unconscious, they can take for granted, they could miss, they can't appreciate with any depth. That's what we mean when we're saying when people awaken egoically and they're in a place of balance, those things become far more clear, and they lay the foundation for experiencing the very healthy sense of gratitude for what's been provided and what's available within their being.
Great. Okay. Well, we're almost at the top of the hour here, and I do have another guest coming on, so I want to thank you for being on the show.
Joe, we want to thank you for the opportunity, and Vanessa, to you for your questions, and we want to thank your listeners for giving us a chance to put forth our message.
Joe and Vanessa, it was a pleasure to meet with you this way, and hope we can do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Now, one more thing is, would you like to give out your website or contact information one more time before you go?
Sure. The website is egoandspirituality.com, lindammartin.net, and theegounmasked.com. And the book is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Balboa Press.
Okay, we've got 2 minutes left. Is there anything that you'd like to leave our listeners with? Any final messages?
Yeah, a couple comments real quickly. Our work isn't so much about telling people how to live. We don't want to do that. We're really basically helping them to see more of how they are living. And if they are not satisfied with that an approach they may want to consider as a way to doing that. Also, I think anytime you're talking about ego and you say that people are egoically unconscious, their ego may lead them to take that as an insult, that it's sort of a commentary on their intelligence, their moral standing, their lack of strength, and nothing can be further from the truth. In fact, at the very beginning of this book, we say that and we repeat that through the book because we want people to understand that we fundamentally view them as very strong, very intelligent, good individuals when their ego isn't getting in the way, when it's being, functioning on an imbalanced level.
And the book is Ego and Spirituality, The Consciousness of Ego Spiritualism. And we also want people to understand no one needs to live in fear, live with guilt or anxiety, but we can all experience the wholeness of who we were meant to be.
All right. Thank you again for being on the show, and hopefully maybe we can get you back in the near future.
We're very interested, Joe, anytime.
Okay. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Right. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so my next guest is Tolec from the Andromeda Council. Tolec will be discussing the Andromeda Council and their latest developments. We also discuss personal experiences with spirit and ego and how a 4D human's perspective and behavior differs from that of a 3D human. Tune in as we discuss the possibilities. Let me see if I can get Tolec on the line here. Tolec, is that you? Tolec? Tolec,
yes.
I got you.
Hi. Joe, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I got you. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And how about the volume?
Your volume sounds pretty good. I had a bunch of other callers in the line here, in the lineup, so sorry for the delay there.
Yeah, I can hear the delay just dropping off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sounds clear. Sounds clear.
Well, welcome back to A Guiding Light.
Well, thank you. Thank you. How was your week?
It was great. It went by so quick, though. It's hard to believe it was a week ago that we were talking.
I know. Yeah, especially with my weeks. They tend to scream by.
Well, I have my lovely girlfriend here, Vanessa.
Hi, Tolec. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Vanessa. Nice to meet you.
And she's going to be my co-host tonight, so we're going to kind of go at you with various questions here, and maybe we can talk about some ego versus spirit, and if there's any other updates that you have, I guess maybe we should get into that first. What do you?
Okay.
What?
I don't have any particular updates, but it's interesting that I listened at, as we did last week. I plugged in at about the 8 or 10 minute mark, so that I could be prepared to dial in. And one of the last things that I heard them say, I think it was the gentleman who said, well, the parts of the ego have what to do with inner healing and emotional healing. And that's actually the approach for what I'm about to talk about tonight and address. And quite honestly, it's going to dovetail with something you and I talked about last week. So this will be one of those very synchronistic conversations.
Good. Cool. Well, I'll tell you what. If you have something you want to go with, I'm just going to let you go. And then but I do have questions along the way. But if you have something you want to talk about, I'm going to let you just go to it.
Yeah. It's an approach that I think will prove that everybody listening able for. Before I begin, I do want to say that, as I've mentioned before and to a lot of other people, I feel very comfortable and it's very easy for me to talk about all things Andromeda and Andromeda Council work related, talking about my personal life. But I'm actually going to get to a little more dicings from my personal life to give people an actual illustration and how of what my life I've come through. So, I'll change the names or delete them to protect the innocent, but the story is still valid. It's still something that happened to me. So what I'll do is I'll take it piece by piece. I think it'll take me about 10 to 12 minutes to get through, but if you feel it's appropriate to jump in with a question, try to go ahead and speak slowly. I'll pause.
Okay, but before you go on, maybe you can call
right?
back because you have this echo thing going, and I think if we do that the whole way through the show, it's going to be annoying, and the people aren't going to be able to hear exactly what you're saying unless there's something on your end you can change.
I'll tell you what. I will hang up and call back within seconds.
Okay, let's do that.
All right. Here we go.
All right, guys, so hang on the line here while Tolec hangs up, and we're going to get him right back on the line. And I know we have some other callers here, so let me just pull this up here. And as soon as he calls back in, we'll be set. But I really didn't want that to continue, and I don't know if it's just on my end that I'm hearing that, because I know in the past, as I've been recording, I was hearing something that the rest of the audience couldn't hear. But what was ironic was the first hour sounded perfect from the other end, and when Tolec called in, of course it was very disrupted, and there was many echoes in it there. So we're going to try to get him back on here. He hasn't called back in yet. And what I'd like to do whenever he comes back on, after, I guess he has a 10 or 12 minute discussion that he wants to do, and we're going to let him go into that. But I also wanted to ask him questions such as what he feels the difference in spirit and ego is from like a 3D perspective of humanity compared to 4D, or if that question has ever even come up, because it's something that as we've been dialoguing the past couple of weeks here, it just came to mind, especially with tonight's discussion with our first hour and guests, Dr. Nick Martin and Reverend Linda Martin. So we're still waiting here to see if he's going to pop on here, and not quite sure if he's still trying to call in. So let me just make sure he has the number. Okay. Well, it's not. He's saying that he's in the queue, but he's not. So let me just see if I can get a hold of him here. See if he can call back. Please call back in. And let's see. No, he's not in there. So we're having some technical difficulties here. This is the first time. I know that we've had some difficulties in the past, but I'm not quite sure. If you could please be patient here. I'm not quite sure what's going on. I don't think it's on our end here because, like I said, we just had the guests on. So let's see here. Just so we don't have dead air time here, I just want to repeat that the last two people that were on, for those who are just coming on to listen to Tolec's show here, if you're just logging on now, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty. He was on the line, but it was really echoing, and we're trying to get him to call back in. But the previous guests that were on the first hour were Dr. Nicholas Martin and Reverend Linda Martin, who are a married couple. They co-authored the book Ego and Spirituality, The Consciousness of Ego Spirituality. So if you want to find their book, you can go to their website, which we'll have posted a link on my website, guidinglight.com. And also you can find it at Amazon.com. But in the meantime, we're still trying to get Tolec back on the line here. And I'm not quite sure what's going on here. So please hang on the line here, you guys. And I'm just going to try to work at getting him back on here. And in the meantime, I'm going to play this intro. So it gives me a minute or about 45 seconds to hook back up with them. So please excuse me here.
Visit atwsource.com to take the next step along your path of awakening. You're listening to Awakening Truth Worldwide Radio and its network of radio shows. presented by the teachers of Awakening Truth Worldwide, where spirituality, truth, and consciousness collide.
Okay, so we're still trying to get Tolec back on the line, but I know there's some listeners out there that had called in, and I had to clear the queue here, so if you could please call back in. If you have any questions for myself or for Vanessa, my co-host tonight, if you have any questions about spirit or ego, which we were just talking about the hour prior to Tolec's communication here, but we're still trying to get him back on the line here, and I'm not quite sure what's going on. But if you do call in, we can maybe help you out with any questions. And the call-in number is 323-679-0927. And so please call in if you have any questions. And we're going to try to get him back on the line here. And if not, then I guess I hope we don't have to cancel it, but it's not much of a show without your guest. And unless we do have some callers, so. Yep, I'm not quite sure what's going on here. So. What you guys might have to do is call back in here in a little bit, because I think I might have to close out this whole session in order for him to be able to link back up with us. So I'm just going to close this out and check back in about 2 minutes, please. Okay, so we do have a caller in here. So before I check out, caller, are you with us? Area code 631, are you with us? So we must be having some technical difficulties, because I just pulled up this caller here, and I'm sorry, but I can't hear you on your end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hang up here and call back in myself so that we can hopefully straighten this up. It might be on the Blog Talk side, and that's why we're having difficulty here. So please hang on.
Joe?
Tolec, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, wow, that was really strange. Even the callers that were calling in, I tried to pick up, but I couldn't hear them.
Yeah, there's, let's see. Well, as you know, we were interrupted quite a few times last week.
Right.
It looks like the powers that be and Cabal, et cetera, have finally, discovered me, and were certainly interrupting by way of an insidious clicking sound during all of last week's interview. And you weren't doing it, and I wasn't doing it. Yeah, right. So sounds like they're obviously trying to interrupt this conversation again, but I'm glad we were reconnected.
Yeah, thank you for calling back in. And I'm just going to let you go with it for your 10 to 12 minutes, and then if any callers call in, after that, we'll bring them on, and then we have some questions for you as well.
Okay. Well, as I was mentioning earlier, I typically talk a lot about the actions the Andromeda Council have taken and are taking, and I'm really comfortable doing that, less so speaking about myself, but the only way that I'm going to be able to share what I know with regard to this lesson of ego and healing is to tell a story about myself. So what I'll do is the best job I can. I'll speak as slowly as possible to relay all the details, and I'll just retain the names of the people to protect the innocent. Okay?
Sounds good.
Here we go. All right, here we go. As a way of teaching, as I often do, I'm going to initially provide a couple of analogies and metaphors before I dive into the how-to, the means of positive change that I'm going to be speaking about. And as the last couple were talking about, actually in the last 8 to 10 minutes, either he or she mentioned inner healing and emotional healing. And I find it interesting that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about tonight, using myself as an example of ways that people can heal and change and have a completely different outlook on life. So, I also need to tell people that the foundational understanding for the knowledge I'm about to cover comes from what I learned from a very wise man, a very wise, if you will, spiritual teacher, a spiritual scholar, and his name is Gary Zukav. It's Z-U-K-A-V. And I learned about his teachings, and this goes back, what I'm about to describe goes back at least about 12 years before he ever came on Oprah, before he was ever famous. And back at that time, he had written at least 3 books that I was aware of. The first one I didn't read. That was the Dancing Wu Li Masters. The second book was The Seat of the Soul, and the third book was The Heart of the Soul. And today this guy's got a website. It's called seatofthesoul, SOUL.com. And between the 2 books, The Seat of the Soul is more technical in its writing style and approach, and The Heart of the Soul goes to the core issues of what Gary Zukav addresses. And it's much easier to absorb. In paperback, I think it's available today for about $7. But both of these books describe the ways that people act out in their day-to-day lives and why they act in certain ways that they do. And Mr. Zukav, for people that aren't aware of his work, it's worth citing and taking the time to go through because it's foundational to everything I'm going to be talking about. He boils down people's motivations and their actions into 2 main categories: love or fear. Here are some examples of love: kindness, appreciation, gratitude, helping others with small acts of kindness, giving of yourself with no expectations in return, simply letting people know that you care about them, people in your every day-to-day lives. Examples of emotional actions and ways of treating people, responding to certain situations, come out of the category of fear. And those include anxiety, anger, obsession, compulsion, avarice, greed, being hurtful, being spiteful, being mean, being hateful, lashing out. These are all examples of fear. And he addresses other issues in the books and specifically how each of them affects each of us. But what we're here to discuss this evening, at least in terms of my approach, is how each of these categories and the emotions that people retain in each of these categories affects us subconsciously. And it affects how we carry ourselves and how we act toward people over the course of years. Whether we're acting out of negative and fear-based emotions or we're acting out of love-based emotions. And the best thing that we can do to free ourselves and live fearless, fear-free, and happy lives is to be able to transmute and release those buried emotions that are fear-based, that continually cause us problems, because until we release them and heal, those fear-based, the energy of those fear-based emotions is going to dog us for all of our lives. So, here we go, and I'm going to dive into the analogy or the metaphor that I was talking about before I tell my own story. Here's the metaphor. Old All right. I need to be specific. The energy of old, buried, painful emotions and memories are like dirt in the bottom of a glass of water. You can't truly have clean water until you get rid of all the dirt, all of it. Now, you can go through your life, and your life will consist of a whole bunch of events and interactions, and every once in a while, some people or certain situations are going to trigger those old, painful emotions that are buried. And that's like taking the glass and shaking it, stirring it around. Well, sooner or later, once you stop stirring and the lesson of that particular experience settles down, it looks like you have a clean glass of water again, right? Well, that's only looks. It only looks like the water's clean. You cannot, as a person, and will not, as a person, have clean water, which is a clean, balanced, emotional life, until you get rid of all the dirt, until you transmute and release the energy of all of those hurt emotions. And that's the way that this works. Those emotions have energy, and they're buried. And unless we release those emotions and we transmute them, we're going to carry them into every single situation we get into that, to quote an old friend of mine, presses your buttons, so to speak. And the thing to do is have new positive emotions and experiences and memories that can create a new you. So, of course, the question now stands, how do we create new positive memories, emotions that create a new you? Well, as I mentioned, in order to create a new you, you have to transmute and release the buried emotions of the old you that you've been carrying for years. Here's the place where ego comes into play. The first thing you need to do is take your ego and set it aside so that any part of your ego that might seek to defend your past feelings, your past actions, your past emotions. Because remember, we need to get to the true core of self and what those buried emotional issues are. You need to put that part of ego aside that would want to stand up and defend yourself. You got to put it aside enough to make a commitment to yourself that no matter what stuff that comes up that might cause new pain or might cause hurt as you're going through this healing process, because these are all, keep in mind, these are old pains, old emotions coming up from when you were 2, 3, 4, 12, 14, 18, 20, 22, 24, etc. These are all going to come up in the process of healing. And if you're going to heal, you have to put that defensive part of your emotion aside so that you can go through the healing process. I know this is a lot. I'm almost done. Most of you are now asking, how do we transmute and release those old painful memories and heal? How do we begin to have a fun, happy, fearless life? I'll be honest and say I don't know all of the ways, but I do know one that works. And now, here's my disclaimer. I'm not a clinician, nor am I a licensed therapist. I'm not. I'm simply one man who's gone through some considerable growth and healing in his own life, and I'm going to share with you one story that's evidence of how I was able to face my own history of painful emotions that I had carried around and why I'm living a different life today. This one story won't take too long, but it'll serve as a good illustration as to what I'm talking about. About 12 years ago, I was in a relationship with a young woman. We were both adults. I was in my really early 40s. She was in her late 30s. I've never been married. She was married once. There were no children. So, we were both adults, well along in life. And this relationship should not have had any problems, and by any measure of a normal relationship. But somewhere around the 6-month mark of this relationship, I could tell that there were some things that were not right about her. There were huge mood swings. She, many times during the week, had a high degree of anxiousness and fear that didn't seem rationally based in anything. As an example, on some weekends when we would decide to go away, set plans to go someplace and go to a B&B and have a nice weekend together, we'd start to be like 5 to 7 miles out of town, maybe sometimes a little longer. She'd start causing fights. And she exploded at least 3 or 4 weekends that completely fell apart, that we almost never got out of town. And I had to turn around because her level of anxiety was freaking her out. I don't know what the clinical name for this, but it has to do with her need to stay close to home. And after about 6 months of watching this kind of behavior, and of course it was affecting our relationship, she asked if we would go to like a kind of an alternative family counselor, couples therapist. So now we're talking 98, 99, and I don't know how much people were talking about couples therapy back then, but I cared about this woman and certainly loved her and said, okay, if we're going to give this relationship a real shot, then I owe it to her and to myself that we should go to this gentleman and engage in this couples therapy. This therapy lasted about 6 to 8 months. The relationship didn't make it, but what I learned in the process was not only did she have some pretty severe emotional issues, because as I came to find out, she had been abused as a young girl. And from what I understand, the younger the child, the deeper the trauma and the emotional abuse. And she was like 3.5, 4 when this happened. And for some reason, in her mid to late 30s, this stuff all started to come up. And I apparently was, I think, her first boyfriend after a marriage crash that came into her life, and she was experiencing all of this stuff. Of course, it interjected itself into our relationship. The more important issue here is that she was able to undergo, and it wasn't traditional therapy, believe me. She was able to undergo therapy, and I was able to undergo learning, emotional healing of my own, because I came to find out in that process. Yeah, there were a lot of issues and problems that were caused because of her severe emotional reactions, her anxieties, her fears, her phobias that were getting in the way of us having a healthy relationship. There were some old pains of mine that were coming up from when I was like 4, 5, 6, 14, 15 as a teenager. Those issues had to do with my relationship with me and Mom, and I love her dearly, but we've all got issues with our parents, and there were our brothers and sisters. I had some issues with my dad that I had to deal with. The point of this whole story is that I came to learn that there's a process that people call today called NLP, and that's what this gentleman did for us. What he did was spend some time with us, ask us some questions, and then he would build a tape for each one of us. And we would each go home, and he'd say, you got to listen to this tape at least 14 times to manifest change, because the tape has music, it has alpha, beta, delta, and theta brainwave activity, which will go to your subconscious and reprogram into your subconscious how you feel about these different aspects of your life. I think she had, I don't know, like 12 or 14 tapes. And I went home with, I think, 4 after many sessions. Most of them had to do with self-esteem and self-consciousness. I remember one clearly where I had to come to peace and come to terms with certain issues about myself and my dad. And the end of this whole story is that experience was transformative. And every time I finished a tape, I would start to feel lighter and more free. Every time I finished a tape, I started to feel a new aspect of myself rise to the surface. I remember when I finished the last tape, and I couldn't tell you now what it was about, but it had to do with enjoying all of life that there is here for us, that this is a beautiful planet, it's a beautiful world, that there are things waiting for us to delve into and to explore, and that in the process of life we can be the best that we can be, kind of a tape. Today I'm aware of a woman who's been producing, initially I think it was tapes, and then CDs, and more recently MP3 downloads, and her name is Kelly, it's either Howell or Powell. Her website is brainsync.com. And I'm not necessarily endorsing her, but I'm not endorsing her either. I'm just saying that this is the method that helped us, and certainly helped me, become a new person, because everything that I went through in those 3 or 4 tapes helped me transmute and release a whole bunch of old emotional pain that I had been carrying around my own life that no longer served me. I had gotten to that point where I was ready to clearly evolve, and I had to put my ego aside in working with this man who is this couples therapist, this counselor. I had to put my ego aside in order to look and face all of those old fears and pains. And the result has been astounding. I'll share with you another story which kind of will button up this whole scenario and give proof that I'm a living example that this stuff works. Back in 2001, let me back up. I had to leave the southern Arizona area back in the late 90s. That's when I met this woman back in my home state in the Northeast. Came back to southern Arizona and was hired by a local man in a real estate development firm and did some work with him. Now, this man was somewhat of a tyrant. And in many ways, he resembled not the tyrant piece, but the barking and yelling piece. My own dad, when he wasn't getting his way, would bark, and he would bark loudly to intimidate. Now, that hadn't been said. I love my dad, but he still did it the whole time I knew him. And in the same way, this guy that I worked for here locally, I experienced within 3 to 4 months the same kind of arrogant kind of bullying behavior, that if he didn't get his way, it didn't matter who he was talking to, he was going to start barking louder and louder and louder, ultimately until he got his way. Well, the reason for the story is this. Since I had transmuted and released the pain of that experience of my dad barking at me my whole life, by the time that I got to this guy, this new boss, he started to bark at me. And sooner or later, after 3 or 4 months, he figured out that he wasn't affecting me. He couldn't control me because his barking didn't affect me. Now I'll tell you exactly why it didn't. When people bark and they're carrying an abusive or harmful energy that's meant to intimidate, there's fear in back of that energy. If he was barking at me, trying to produce fear, and I was still carrying the energy of fear, I would feel it. Okay? So now we look again at this scenario with this man who is my boss. He's barking and yelling and barking and barking, and I'm standing there like a cloud. It's just blowing right through me. I appreciate the points that he's making. I find no need to defend myself. I ask him some questions, but I can't feel his fear. I can't feel his anger. It's literally going through me like a cloud. Why? Because I had healed from that pain of that energy carried forward from what Dad did as I was a kid growing up. I had healed that part of me, so I was no longer carrying the fearful energy of that pain. So this boss is barking and barking and yelling and barking, and after 4 months he gave up and he fired me. It was great. He couldn't control me. He couldn't control me because there was no pain or fear to control. That's the end of all my stories. And again, today, people call it NLP. People weren't calling it that back then, but this is what I went through with this young lady. Subsequent to our couples therapy together, I worked with this gentleman for another 6 months to heal and transmute all of those painful old energies that I was carrying around. And I've been a happy little dog ever since. I'm laughing because this is, it's my life. This is what I've been through. And if I do sound joyous, it's because I do live a joyous life. There's not much that I run into that I can't handle. I've had all sorts of people, negative, mean, vengeful, hurtful, vulgarity, swearing, accusative on the Andromeda Council YouTube channel when different videos are posted and they post their thoughts or opinions. I have yet to lash out at one of them, not one of them. Now, I may not allow their abusive behavior on the channel. That's my prerogative. But I never lash back out at them. Why? Because they don't touch any fear or pain in me. I just see what they are, how they're acting. I stop their behavior. That's what it's like to live as a fear-free, self-empowered person. Pause. How is this relevant to spiritual growth? When people clear out all of the muck of the dirt in the bottom of your glass called your emotional spiritual body, your spiritual essence can start to open up enough to start asking questions about who am I? Why am I here? Why have I come here to this planet? What is my role about? I really need to ask somebody. If I can't get those answers myself, I need to ask somebody who will give me those answers. Where, spiritually, how long ago was I born? What planet was I born on? What is my spiritual core essence all about? Why am I people will start to ask those questions, and they'll start to ask those questions of themselves more than they will about who's coming here and why. And they'll do that because they've already gotten to the place where they're self-empowered. And most of those people will be able to ride this transition that we're coming through and will continue to come through with the evolution of this planet. I use the metaphor of light in the rain. If you're riding a horse, give the horse some slack, go light in the rain. That's how these people will go through this transition of our planet into being a next dimensional world. Very lightly, very calmly, with very little disruption. That's what it's like to live a life that is fearless, self-empowered, and without fear. And it's my own experience, and that's all it is. I hope I did a good job of explaining it, but I thought it would. Believe me, I had no clue that those people were going to say in the last 8 to 10 minutes, it's about inner healing and healing your inner child. But, here we are. and this is my story, and if it can help anybody to any degree, here it is, and I hope that it can.
No, absolutely. That was a great testimony. Thank you for that. And I mean, because a lot of people, and I even asked this this past show an hour ago, within the hour, I guess. You know, how are real people, or how is this practical to like all of humanity? I mean, a lot of teachers teach these types of things but can't even do it themselves. So here you are giving a testimony of something that you physically did, and you actually, on many levels, without even, maybe you didn't even know it, but I'm talking about the energy part that you said that when you carry these lower vibrational frequencies or energies of fear within you, what you have within yourself, you attract more of that to yourself. And we were just talking about that. I was just saying that you attract the same boyfriend, and in fact, with the same first name, and they look exactly the same, you attract that to yourself over and over and over again until you can transmute it and get rid of it.
Right. Well, in my case, it was a girlfriend.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But
thank you. And it's by the way, for the record, it's always been a girlfriend. You make a really good point. By the way, I no longer attract those kinds of women at all. And since that point in time, and this is, here's another, you talk, there are all sorts of different spiritual teachers out there, but whether it's Wayne Dyer or Gary Zukav or others, they all talk about, whether they call them spiritual or emotional, they are still lessons. And all of them that I've ever heard say that these lessons come in layers, like in layers of an onion. And the lesson can come back 4, 5, 6 times as a different nuanced layer of that same lesson. And in closing on this subject, what will happen is maybe it's like the 5th time, and you'll see that lesson coming off from off in the distance, and you go, no. I've seen this one before. Been there, done that, buried the T-shirt, don't need to do it again. And you know what? It won't come back. Because you got to get to that place. You got to get to that place where you go, don't need this anymore. I've learned this lesson. I can see what it is. Exit. I'm going this way because I don't need this lesson. And it's not avoidance. It's about discernment and deciding what each of us want in our lives. And again, once we see those come up over and over again, we learn that last layer. When we learn of that particular lesson, we don't need to go through it again. We just don't, and they don't come around anymore. They just don't.
Right.
And you're right. It is the energy of the emotions that get buried in our subconscious. And what I learned about the healing process is that each of these tapes, what they would do is they would break, first of all, they'd use alpha, beta, delta, and theta brainwaves of different variances, and they would break down the old, painful, quote-unquote, negative emotion that was being carried forward, and the first half of the tape. And in the second half, or the second 2/3, he or today, Kelly Powell, will use visual images to build beautiful new imagery in your subconscious. And I've also learned that everything I've ever heard about human spirit and human motion is that we retain things best visually. And so there'll be things like beautiful castles with walls overflowing of ivy and cascading waterfalls of beautiful color and sparkling light. And, they use all sorts of imagery to reinforce new feelings of goodness and healthiness and wholeness. And, it's funny because 2 weeks ago you and I were talking about, somebody came in my office, this is you, and I had finished my work, and there was this man or woman who has this NLP practice. And you came out and you're like, wait, I want to talk to you. And this is what we're talking about. This is exactly what we're talking about. This is the process of NLP. And this is how it transforms people's lives.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you, speaking of energy, when you were carrying a lower vibration, even though you didn't know it, looking back, since you released that or transmuted that, do you find that it's easier now to connect with the Andromedans now, or could you not even connect at that particular time because you're at a lower vibration?
Okay, this answer has 2 parts. Part A, the answer is late summer of 1993 is when the commander of the primary Andromeda Council Biosphere picked me up, and we took 3 trips back in time. I did not have any contact with him again until September 2010. Okay, part B. The period of late summer 1998 through all of 1999 into mid-2000 is when I had that relationship and went through all of that growth, releasing all of those old, painful emotions. So that's like year 2000. Year 2001, I come back to the southern Arizona area, and I live my life, and I do my thing, and I work for a couple of companies. And then September 2010, I start having contact with the commander from the primary Andromeda Council Biosphere again. So there is a large period of time between 93 and 2010,
right,
which encompassed 98, 99, 2000 of when I went through that period of healing. So, I'm sure that they saw what happened in my life so that they knew I was able to handle whatever would be thrown at me, because I'm not operating from a place of fear. I'm just a pain in the butt, and I ask a lot of questions. but certainly not from a place of fear at all. No, not at all.
Right.
I don't know if that answered your question, but
well, yeah. Basically, because we're talking about energy, and I know I don't know if you've meditated throughout that whole time, or if you notice now, because you must be telepathic, or you must be communicating that way in some sense. A lot of us are channeling, whether we know it or not. And once you release a lot of these lower vibratory energies or attachments or blockages or whatever, to me it seems like it's a lot easier to tap in or to connect once all of that is released, because as you say, the fear vibration is lower. So it keeps you from that higher dimension, those higher energies.
Yeah, that's a good point. Prior to my experience, prior to my physical field trip through outer space back in time, in the late summer of 93, at least to my knowledge and based on my memories, all of my communication that was coming from him and them was all one way from them and coming to me in either like a vision, quick snapshot visions, and a lot of them in the dream state. I had a lot of dream state experiences of being in outer space, on being ships, flying through space. But, you make a good point, because I didn't start any of my telepathy with him until there was this telepathic contact when I was in northern Arizona in 2008. And it was brief. And then all of the contact started telepathically, which results in the website people see today, in September 2010. So the telepathy only started like once in 2008 and then a whole bunch, and it's continued forward since 2010. So, yeah, you make a really good point there.
Okay. I got some questions, and I'm sure Vanessa does also, but we have a caller online. Are you ready for some questions now, since we have somebody on the line, or do you want to? How do you want to do this?
It's your show. I'm gonna let you run this however you want to, and take the ball, run with it. Go ahead.
All right. Well, you know what? Then area code 631. Welcome to A Guiding Light.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you for calling in.
Oh,
Do you have a
great.
question?
You're welcome. Yes. Hi. My name is Kim, calling from New York. How are you?
I'm very good. How about
Good,
yourself?
thank you. I've been getting disconnected throughout the whole entire show, so I apologize if that happens in the middle of this. But I'm calling from New York, and I'd like to say hi. Hi, Tolec. How are you?
Hello. Doing good. Good to hear the voice.
Good. good to hear your show. What I can hear of it is amazing, and I did hear the first hour. So I just want to comment on, thank you for sharing that story. That was definitely helpful. And it leads into the question that I have, actually, which is people who have been doing this work and have read those books, which I read Zhukov's work actually years ago too, so that's a funny coincidence. But, you know, people who read Eckhart Tolle, Zhukov, do the work, do the spiritual work, the psychological work, all of that, who have been on this path, meditation, all of that.
But Kim, and I'm sorry to interrupt. We'll break this issue into two. The healing issue into two parts. A is the Zhukov part, which is here's why people act the way they do, and that's what his books are about. It's like here's why, and here's how people act from either fear or love, and what are the descriptions in both of those categories. So that's why they do it.
Right.
The healing part is what I went through with this girlfriend at that time. Because if each of us are, and I think the glass of water is a great metaphor. If each of us are a glass of water, and all we do is we wait until the dirt settles to the bottom, every time somebody really pushes our buttons, that water's going to get dirty again, and it'll just kind of settle down, and you think you've got a clear glass of water. Seemingly clear glass of water equals a calm, evolved, healed, whole person. Wrong.
Right.
It's the glass. You're right. Right. It's the glass of seemingly clear water with some dirt that settled at the bottom. You gotta get rid of the dirt, and the way to get rid of the dirt, at least based on how I experienced it, was to put ego aside, put the fear of facing the messy stuff. You gotta put that aside, and you go, all right, whatever comes up in this session with this man or woman, whoever you deal with, or even if it's just the brain stink, MP3s or downloads, that's the healing part. That's the part that addresses the old fears and emotions, transmutes them, releases them, and builds a new sense of positive self. That's the people that not many people are talking about. You need A and B.
I agree completely. I completely agree. I think that's a rare animal to find somebody who has A and B, and you know that's why I'm so thrilled to have calls like this and speak to Dr. Marra and yourself, because I find very few people that can talk about A and B and who will read these books. But I highly do recommend the books you've talked about, as well as Eckhart Tolle, taking up practices like Yoga Nidra, which is a meditative form of healing. You actually don't even necessarily have to know why everything is. I mean, I like to know why.
That's true.
But you can heal yourself, because there may not be time to go there, you know, with all that for some people. If they haven't been on this path for years and years, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. The Zhukov books simply explain why, but it's the and Kelly with her brain sync downloads or MP3s. She's one person that's done it really well, I think, for like 10 or 12 years, but it works. I mean,
I agree,
I'm happy
because
to say
is that the one you were? She goes into the different states of mind, of different states of consciousness of the brain, the alpha state and that sort of thing. Is that what you were talking about?
Yes. And this gentleman.
Yes, because you were fading in and out of the call. My call was dropping. I absolutely agree with that form of healing, and I've been very familiar with that form of healing for a number of years, and there are definitely a lot of people out there who can help people with that. And Yoga Nidra is another one that does that it takes your brain into those states and heals things on such a deep level that you don't need to know every reason why you are the way you are. In fact, I think it would be really, really hard to know every reason why, you know, especially when you even mentioned a lot of this stuff happens subconsciously. So how are you going to know that? So
especially if we're like, as a little kid, 3, 4, 5, 6, I know that I'm not happy all the time, but I'm certainly not conscious of carrying forward that unhappiness. And I did, and I carried forward unhappiness as I was a not happy teenager. There's just stuff. And the good news is I didn't have to bring it into my adult life anymore. I'd gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, in for a dime, in for a dollar. I'm here with this young woman. I'm going to invest myself in this healing process, whatever comes up. And I did. So it works. All I can say is it worked for me, and I certainly recommend it to other people.
I agree. I completely do, too. And I've done that same type of work and other similar work, and I agree absolutely. And it kind of leads into my question here for you, whether you've had this discussion or not, I'm not sure yet. But as far as the spiritually active people, or people like yourself or Dr. Marra or others who've been on this path and done this work, how will this affect us after the shift? Will we still be on a different path? Because I consider myself on a very different path than any of my friends and most of my family. I have very few people, even in the yoga world and world of meditation, that I can completely talk about all of these aspects with, how spirituality and science tie together with current, with ufology and exopolitics and what's going on in politics in the world, and the whole thing, the shift, all of it. So it's hard to find people that can talk about that whole entire group of subjects and so much more, like yourself. So I guess my question is, how will that, we're on a different path than most people, how is that going to be different after the shift, or will it, or will everything just balance out? I'm not sure if the two are related, but I'll give you the best answer that I can. Okay.
This solar system, this planet, is raising in vibration, and it's going to come to a point where, based on everything my Andromeda Council friends have told me about, January 2014, this world becomes literally and vibrationally a fourth-dimensional world. That means that our physical, gross matter, organic bodies transmute and transform, and we become crystalline-based, fine essence spirit matter bodies who are simply more evolved by virtue of the vibration that we're going to be operating at. I think globally everybody has an opportunity to grow, and we all have an opportunity to learn about each other, but spirituality is not what people think. Spirituality is not about, and I'm going to paraphrase some people who say, "Oh, I'm getting so much closer to God, and I no longer follow, the Catholic faith or the Lutheran faith or the Jewish faith. I'm just spiritual and I believe in God." All right. Well, now here's the point of differentiation. Becoming spiritual is not about getting closer to God, the Creator. You can choose to get closer to the essence of what is that beautiful creational life force called God, Creator, the Great Mystery. But becoming more spiritual is about the process to learn as much as you can about what your true core spiritual essence is. Where did you come from? Which planet? How long ago? Who are your people? Why are you here? That's what being spiritual is about. And people have gotten that issue confused for a long, long time. Now, I don't know if that answers. I don't know if that answers your question, but
I understand what you're saying. I guess what I more want to know is, I get it, but so it's all about our individual connection. Yes, that's going to definitely still be there after the shift. But I guess what I mean is, because we're still going to be semi-physical in 4D, we're still going to have a bit of an ego, I think, at least one enough to get through our day and, that sort of thing. how is our spiritual path now, if it's one that's pretty progressive and pretty high, how will that translate later after the shift?
Okay, all right, now I understand. All right, here we go. Everything that I've learned about higher dimensional life, whether you're talking about like from the mid-4th level up to the 5th, and then the lower 5th and the mid-5th and higher, it's all about evolution. So once we become, and we're not going to be popping into the lower 4th. Everything that I've learned tells me we're going to be popping somewhere into like the mid-4th dimensional and or density level. So each of us will have an opportunity to have the experiences we're supposed to have, to learn whatever we want to learn, to explore whatever we want to explore. And somewhere, sometime around like the 8,000 or 9,000 year mark, because everything that I've been told tells me that as fourth dimensional beings, our lifespan goes up until about 10,000 years. Now, keep in mind we're talking about fine matter, crystalline body essence years, not organic coarse matter. So we're talking about a long period of time, and when we get to the place that we go, you know what, I've learned as much as I can here in this fourth dimensional, fourth density vibration. I've contributed as much as I can to society. I'm ready to evolve to the fifth. And you choose a moment, and you and your sweetheart or whoever, and you evolve. And then you're a fifth dimensional person, and you choose to learn new fifth dimensional experiences, which include joining a group of, let's say, ornithologists, people who like to study birds, and you want to go to the planet Venus to study fifth dimensional birds. Well, you and Jack and Sue and Pete and Phil can all get together in a soul group, a little blue energy ball, and travel off to Venus and study fifth dimensional bluebirds. Those are the kinds of things that fifth dimensional people do. So the short answer is it's all about learning, education, evolution, choice, and then moving on and becoming a higher dimensional person. That's how it works.
True. Okay, I understand that too. And I don't want this to sound like ego, but I realize that it may. What I want to know, though, really is how much of our current path in this reality that we've achieved, say, spiritually, not economically or wealth-wise or anything, but spiritually, our spiritual experiences and what we've learned, and say the story you told and what you went through, that dark night of the soul that you went through, these things we go through that take us to the next level, and all of our spiritual experiences. So are you saying that when we get to the other side, where we be is in conjunction with where we currently are spiritually, and we just continue to grow from there? So it's kind of like an always evolving growth process spiritually?
All right. Well, you're actually mixing up emotional growth and spiritual acknowledgement and spiritual growth.
Okay, let's just say spiritual growth. Yeah, agreed. Let's not say emotional growth. Let's just say spiritual growth. Okay.
Spiritual growth only has to do with the evolution of human beings and other species on this planet as we go from being 3D to 4D. This is not a theological issue. This is an issue of evolution. There are Mayans and researchers and all sorts of other people, and I'm not a researcher, I'm not an investigator, but I don't know how many people there are, including the Mayans, that say, at this moment in this solar system, in this planet's history, it is its destiny to evolve and go to the next higher vibrational level. That is a physicality. That is a change in physicality, a change in dimensional being, a.k.a. a different level of spiritual life. You could use those words, but it's a different level of density, different level of dimensional life. And I don't care whether you're a fifth dimensional person or a fourth or a third, we always learn and grow. The answer to that question is given. But yes, the emotional and spiritual are connected only to the degree that, like you said, you got to clear out all of the crap so that you can start examining who am I from a spiritual perspective? Where did I come from? What planet? What people? Am I, how long have I been coming here and experiencing a 3D life to have all of these 3D experiences? That's the only degree that the questions of spirituality are relevant. But living that life, we're just going to change. We're going to go from 3D to 4D. I am specifically trying not to make it mystical because in the context of this conversation, it's not mystical. There's emotional healing and growth, and then there's evolution, and we're going to evolve. We're going to go from being a soul and spiritual essence that's wearing a human body to being a soul, spiritual essence, fourth dimensional human. And that's all fine matter. Fine matter, spirit matter. They're all the same.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this has helped you at all, but don't mix the two terms of emotional growth and spiritual growth, even though they're connected.
Okay.
Spiritual growth is just evolution. It's a non-theological issue. It's about the vibration.
Right. I'm not speaking theologically at all. I'm meaning totally a spiritual connection with your inner source, your higher self. Right. That's what I mean. And so a person who's currently connected to that now, I'm just curious if they're going to be a little bit more evolved once the shift happens.
Be fully aware.
The person who's not connected at all, who's still going to shift, that may not happen.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, and let me answer first, and this is a 20-second answer. This will help. People who are here on planet Earth, January 2014, during the moment of the shift, we will gain back all of our memories from all of our past lifetimes. There'll be complete knowledge. Okay. And I don't know if that helps or not, but sorry, Joe, go ahead.
I think it does. It does help. Thank you. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that this is such a big story here that Tolec is right in what he's saying, but I think there's more to it than that because there's 7 billion people on this planet, and not everyone comes from the same planet, from the same dimension. Some of us are here from higher dimensions, and some of us will go to 4D. Some of us will go to these higher dimensions from where we've come. We've only come here for this experience and to help humanity and help the Earth transition. But
You're right.
Also, so with her question, I just wanted it to be clear so other people who are listening who that didn't ring true to, because it is a truth. You're right on when you're saying it, but there's a bigger story to it as well. And not to miss out on, we live thousands of lives, and it depends on where our next life is and where we want to go to. And one thing that's also important to say is some of the other people that are considered, friends or even our family, we can't bring them with us because that's not their soul journey. And it's okay to let them be where they're going to be. And not everybody's going to shift, in my opinion. Now, this is my opinion, but it's rational to think of it this way, because if you don't reach a certain vibratory frequency, you can't. It's just like the reptilians; they can't hang here at a lower vibration, and it's their choice. And we do live in a free will zone right now, so you have the choice to work on yourself, go within, and shed all the old and the crap, as we've been talking about, to go within and go with Mother Earth, because quite frankly, she's ascending whether we're ready or not. And so just by virtue of being on the planet at that time that Tolec is talking about, I totally agree. Those who have chose to be here at that time are going to experience just that. And I think it's going to be cool because it's never happened before, at least not in my awareness. And so this is really an experiment. And these higher beings that are here with us and they're all around us that we might not be able to perceive, nonetheless, they're here. They're here for the big show. And this is an experiment of humanity. It's an experiment of the DNA manipulation and changing. And our star families, they're all out there rooting us on and being like, hey, let's do it. Those who want to come, let's do it. And those who don't, you're perfectly fine. There's no judgment.
Yeah.
And
Joe, I understand, and I'm able to talk about this now because enough people have asked about it. I've had enough people write in with the question, all right, well, Tolec, and this is coming a lot, like in the past 2.5 weeks. How many people do you think are going to evolve along with the planet as it becomes a higher dimensional world? You have to share with me that the number is going to be about 50%, plus or minus 5% either way, that will stay here on planet Earth. It's like in for a dime, in for a dollar. I'm here for the ride. Wherever it takes us, I'm here. And the other 50%, plus or minus, are going to choose to leave. And there are a couple of ways that they can do that, but they just, and actually it's more important to talk about why they're going to choose to leave. They're simply going to choose to leave because their souls and their spirit essence have not yet had enough lessons. They haven't had enough seasoning. And they need more schooling. They need more lessons and seasoning on another third-dimensional world. And so they'll be able to get that.
Yeah,
but that's what I've been told. That's the simple answer as to why the number is going to be somewhere around 50-50, because 50% of them are just, they're not ready. And you know what? That's okay. It really is okay.
I totally agree with you. I don't know what the numbers, of course. That's not my forte, but I totally agree with the rationale. That's exactly right. And that's why on the other side in these higher dimensions, there's no judgment. There just is. Because they know that we've come here to simply experience, and we are timeless beings. We never die. If we don't get it this time, we'll get it the next time. And if it's, if you want to experience something that's what we maybe in our reality here in 3D, some of us may perceive as like a heinous crime or something like that. That's your choice to come here and do that. That's what this planet was here. It's a dualistic, and without the opposition, there's no growth, and that's why this planet specifically is such a hard knocks, so to speak, planet for educational purposes, whether it be for, I guess what I like to call your consciousness, the growth in consciousness and evolution in that respect.
One of the other reasons that they said that this is such a difficult place, and actually this time it's not a day. I was having a conversation with Wendell Stevens back in like 94, 95 here locally, and we were sitting down drinking some herbal tea one Saturday afternoon. We were just talking and shooting the ball, and I said, Wendell, why? Why is this planet so challenging? And why are there so many extraterrestrial and interdimensional life forms coming here? And he said, understand that this planet, more than any other 3D planet out here, has the greatest amount of diversity out of all the other 3D worlds. This one planet is like a microcosm of the solar system, of this galaxy, and of the universe. But again, more than any other planet, it's got the greatest amount of diversity. So for them, it's like coming to the zoo, and they get to see all of these people that have been seeded here from all these different star systems, all these different languages, all these different cultures, all these different theologies, all trying to make it on the same planet.
Right.
This is a tough place.
Yeah, I totally agree.
tough place. But, but also concurrently, if you're going to get some lessons and you want to learn quick, this is the spot to be.
That's it. And a lot of us have come here right before this ascension process or during it because of that particular reason. And that's why people go to certain areas on this planet that are tougher than others, just to get that last lesson in so you can kind of make the shift, so to speak. And you'll be drawn there, or you'll go kicking and screaming, but you'll end up there. So there's a lot of things we can't explain, and we sit there and question why. But like you said earlier, this is to the caller, you don't always have to know in the ego mind why things are the way they are. Sometimes it's better just to go with the flow, and just like water. Because right now is a time that you need to just go with the flow. There are going to be so many changes. There already are, but there's going to be more and more. And
they're going to come faster and faster and faster.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, we have another caller, so thank you, caller from New York. I appreciate the call. That was great.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for taking my call, and many blessings. Tolec, great to hear your voice, and take care, you guys. Have a great night. I'll be listening. Bye.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
All right, good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so we have a caller, area code 551, and we're pulling you in now. Welcome to A Guiding Light.
Hey guys, this is Howard from New Jersey. Hey Tolec, I haven't spoken to you in a while. How you doing?
Hey, how are you, Howard?
I'm doing much better. Great show, guys. I really can relate to what you're saying, especially about the ego and the spiritual quest. Trying to find one's, spiritual essence, and not being such an ego-based person and reacting to the negative energy. I did have two quick questions. The first one, I don't know if you had covered, but when you said that a lot of the alien entities are coming here because the entire planet's going to evolve to 4D, were you saying that's rare, or it's just flat out never happened before, that 7 billion souls descended at once?
It has never happened to this planet. I understand there are a couple of times we've come close. I don't know the details of those times, but that's actually one of the reasons why the people of the Andromeda Council on the various biospheres, including the primary one, that's one of the reasons why they're so excited. This is one of those wow kind of events, because it's the first time that, if you will, a whole planet of people will be able to evolve and become higher dimensional beings without having to die. Basically, you go to bed on a Sunday night, and the next morning you're January 2014, and you're now a fourth dimensional being. That's the deal.
That's wild.
Yeah, first time ever, and they're jazzed because, if you will, again, the whole planet gets to do it without having to die, and B, there are a lot of people from a lot of higher dimensional worlds and on the biospheres that all have spiritual brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and cousins, and they can't wait to see their family members down here. So it's kind of cool, actually. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add to that is that I know we're putting out that one particular date, but in addition to that, right now, everything, as we've been talking about, is getting faster and speeding up, and time is just flying by. And I really think that there are various people on this planet that are also going to evolve to that particular point up until that point. So we're probably going to be mixed, in my opinion, with some people that have these higher abilities that we've ever had before, up until that particular point, and then maybe everybody does shift at that time. I'm not sure, but this is my own perspective or my own consciousness, that I know that as time goes on, and as this planet continually raises in vibration, and we keep attuning to her, and also the sun, as it's having these solar flares, it's also sending energy, which is also uplifting and raising us in vibration and energy and consciousness. And I really think that that's what we're going to see. Some of us in consciousness have woken up before others, and not only is it an awareness, but a side effect, if you will, is going to be these abilities that we have of our truest and highest potential between now and the time that Tolec is talking about.
Yes. Yeah. And certainly the people that are already fully conscious, awakened, aware, they keep looking around this corner going, all right, what's next? This is like, this is a roller coaster ride. What's the next thing around the next corner that's going to bring us one step closer? Right. And I know I've got a lot of people writing to me going, Tolec, man, when is this going to happen? I know you're telling us January 14, but come on, let's speed this thing up. This is way too much fun to wait for. I'm like, yeah, it's all right. There's some stuff that's got to happen on this planet first, so, one thing at a time.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, I just have one last question. I don't know if you recall when I told you a ways back that I was engaging in a lot of deep meditation. I had shared a couple of my I don't know if you call them visions or whatever they were, but that sense of traveling. And, the thing I remember was just how vivid the visions were. It's like, the sky never looked so blue. Colors were almost alive. The water just looked amazing. It almost sensed like everything was vibrating. I couldn't even really put it into words. And that all based around the 11-11-11 event when I was able to actually achieve that. And then I told you I was struck with some weird medical illness where I lost feeling on the upper left-hand side of my body, like right down my forehead, left, ear, neck, back, right arm, everything. And all that meditation went right out the window, and I got bounced into our medical system, which, solution was high-dose steroids for 3 months, which just pushed me to hell and back. Yeah, 4 MRIs later, they basically couldn't figure out what it was, and all the symptoms went away. But is that anything with just, I didn't have any proper training, and I was just pushing myself too far, or some type of reptilian backlash? I don't know, but I've been afraid to attempt anything like that since I've recovered.
Yeah. A couple of things. I don't meditate. So, what I achieve simply because I'm having conversations with these guys, and they're downloading, snapshot images. I'm doing stuff in dream state, and a lot of it's telepathy. But I believe you. I believe what you're telling me. I honestly have no way of knowing what happened to you medically. I don't, because I don't live your life. I'm not standing next to you watching what happens, but I can comment on what you said initially about what you were sensing and seeing. Literally higher vibrational frequencies, more vivid colors. Not only vivid colors, but more vivid colors. If you will, sparkling water. All of that is true. Yeah, all that's true of the next dimensional level up, as well as seeing some creatures we've never seen before because we didn't vibrate at that frequency, so therefore we couldn't see them. So we're going to be seeing some new critters. But sometimes things just happen in our lives, and sometimes they just happen to make us slow down. I don't know what the answers are, but I hope you've recovered okay.
No, I'm fine now. I just try not to go there. I just didn't know if maybe I was reading your experiences and what you described, and I was trying to push myself to go there and to make contact. And I thought, well, maybe I'm just not able to, and that's just too much for me to take. To try to force yourself to envision,
Well,
so I keep it simple now. More on what you guys were saying earlier about, just being a spiritual being, doing the next right thing, and that seems to be the path that's working out better right now.
Yeah. Joe, you were going to make a comment?
Yeah, because I do practice traditional medicine as well as doing the complementary. I would tell you that, and Vanessa and I were just talking about this because she's quite spiritual as well with your particular question, and her comment was exactly what I was thinking, in that you had a release. And through that high vibration of energy, whether you had a cellular memory from this life or from another life, it appeared to me that that's what released. But because of fear and because of what we've been brought up to learn from birth on, whether it be from our family members or the educational system or even from our doctors and immunizations and all that other stuff, we always seem to go back to the 3D way of doing things because that's what we're comfortable with. And so what I would suggest is not to give up on your meditation, because that is quite effective in tapping into your higher self, into your heart. And that's what you're really going to need over the coming months, is to maybe not go so hard so fast, but just allow yourself, though, to tap into yourself. And if none of this rings true to you, don't listen to what I'm telling you, because each individual person on this planet has their own responsibility for themselves, whether it be healthcare or their lifestyle or whatever, because I don't know what you came here to accomplish, as a soul growth. But just from what you did ask a question, so I'm just trying to be broad and say, ideally speaking, I don't think that it's ever a bad idea to go within or meditate and tap into your higher self to get the information that you need for you. That would be my advice.
Right. And by the way, the way that I meditate, and meditate in quotes in this case, I sit outside at night and I listen to the stars or I listen to the crickets. I'll be out on the back porch and I'll watch the little ground squirrels and the butterflies and watch the pollen floating around. I choose to spend as much time as I can in nature. Not enough, and that's, for me, that's what settles and centers me.
Right.
And for me, I get answers without even asking. Information will come to me just because I'm out in nature. Yeah, just because I'm out in nature and my mind is quiet. The whole essence of me is quiet and still. Information comes in.
Absolutely.
So that's my method of meditation, if you will.
No, and that is a form of meditation. You're exactly right. A lot of people do that, and the more time you spend out in nature or tapping into Mother Earth, taking your shoes off, and truly grounding into the energy that she's emitting right now, it's just amazing how it centers you. But most people don't know that.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
Lots of water, because we're made up of a high percentage of water, and we don't replenish that, and it has to be clear and fresh instead of like the things that have fluoride and chlorine.
I drink a couple of glasses every morning now before I even hit the coffee. I fill up 2 glasses. Yeah, 2 full glasses, and it's amazing. A buddy of mine told me about it. Within like 5 to 7 minutes, I go from being groggy and kind of like stuck in neutral to being almost completely conscious, completely awake and aware within like 5 to 7 minutes of drinking 2 tall glasses of water. I'm like, this is cool. I think it may have to do with living in the Southwest and we get dehydrated a lot, but it works. It's a wonderful way to like jumpstart your body and clarify your mind. So, Howard, I don't know if that helps at all, but those are our experiences.
Oh, yeah. No, it was I'll get back into it. And, like I said, Easy does it, and I'm just enjoying the journey right now. But thanks again, guys. Great show, and I'll get off for another caller.
You're a smart man. Enjoy the ride, buddy.
All right. Talk to you soon. Take care.
All right. Thank you for calling in.
All right. No problem. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, we do have one more caller on here. We keep getting callers back and forth on here, so their hand ain't up, so to speak. But I'm going to see if they do want to ask a question for us. Okay, caller with the area code 662. Welcome to A Guiding Light. Do you have a question?
Sure. Hi, Tolec. It's Shirley. Hey, I have a question, but I got to give you just a short background on it. I found some really interesting information, and I know you're going to love, and your listeners too. Kincaid was a 30-year explorer and hunter working for the Smithsonian Institute, and he was going down the Colorado River. And he found an opening to off the Colorado, about 42 miles up the river. Anyway, it's on crystallinks.com, and I sent it to you on a question, but you got like 200 questions on your YouTube stuff, so I wanted to tell you about it, because you can access the information through that crystallinks.com. It's called Lost Cave City in the Grand Canyon. Well, when he went inside the cave, it was in the shape of a wheel with many spokes, and they have a diagram of it. And the pictures show everything, real clear pictures of the cave, what was in it, the whole 9 yards. You've got to read this. And it had artifacts in it. Well, he took some artifacts, and he went inside the cave, but he wasn't really equipped at the time. And there was this one particular chamber which wasn't ventilated like the rest of the cave, and it smelled extremely snaky and foreboding. Typical reptilian, right? So, he took some artifacts and left, and then he sent it to the Smithsonian, and they came out and took all the relics out of there. And this happened, and they have put the article. It's dated April 5th, 1909, that this happened.
Wow, okay.
1909, so that proves, Tolec, what you've been saying. that our government, Smithsonian's the government, and they have known all about this stuff since the beginning.
Well,
so this is physical evidence.
Sure. I certainly, I believe your story. I haven't read it, but I believe your story. But, just as important, if you look to the cultures of Micronesia, Indonesia, throughout Asia, the mountain regions of Southeast Asia, they are full of stories of dragons and reptilians, not necessarily dragons per se, but also reptilians with wings, short wings, that have been wandering through the jungles. Now, I can't imagine that people would create this stuff just because. And it's part of their history. So inside this cave, there's a Tibetan statue, real elaborate. It's got a picture of it. You've got to read it. It's really cool. And my question is, can you ask the Andromeda Council next time you talk to them, what that was all about? I'm sorry, what was all about?
That cave, that's the Grand Canyon.
Oh, well, the simple answer is there have been underground caves running all throughout the southwest of the United States for years that were reptilian operations, all throughout, like a lattice network of them, all throughout New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona, Southern California, and on and on and on. They're all shut down now, but yeah, the reptilians have been here a long, long time. And not anymore, and their time is coming due. There are probably, I want to say, 150 to maybe 200 left running around the planet's surface, but the tens and thousands of them that were in the underground undersea bases, they're all gone. So that's my answer, and thanks for asking.
Well, this would be interesting for everybody because this was, it's documented. I think it was a Phoenix. It's the Phoenix in the Phoenix paper, 1909.
Wow.
Yeah.
Long time back.
Yeah, a lot of people want proof. Well, here it is.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Caller, thank you so much. We have another caller, so thank you for calling in.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. Good night.
All right. We have a caller from area code 209. Welcome to A Guiding Light.
Well, thank you. Good evening. How you guys doing?
Great. How are you?
Yeah.
Doing great.
Tolec, I have a question for you, and I love your shows, and this might be, maybe slightly off topic, but it intrigues me. I love to go out and look at the stars at night. So when I'm seeing those, are those in third dimension because I can see them? Or what dimension are the stars in?
Interesting question.
Getting back to some of the physics and visible light and those kind of things. So I'm just curious about that.
Boy. Well, as I've used this disclaimer before, I am not a scientist. Now, that having been said, I would imagine that there are certainly some planets and some stars that are of a higher vibrational nature. I don't know whether you can see those or not. As an example, there are people from Jupiter that are fifth-dimensional people. How they became fifth-dimensional, I don't know the history, but I know that they're there. Also, we stand here on Earth using three-dimensional eyes, and with three-dimensional eyes, we are sometimes limited in terms of what we can see. So then you have to take into account atmosphere. You have to take into account the strength of the magnitude of the telescope that you're using and or the lens. I mean, there are all sorts of factors. I honestly can't claim to know which of the bodies that you're looking at are which dimensional vibration. I would say that up in, as the Native Americans would say, up in the heavens, there are beings of all sorts that we've never ever seen before that exist. So I certainly think the possibility is there for all sorts of dimensional life. I know it's just...
Well, and as the shift occurs, then, and that kind of what you were just saying, do we see a whole different array of constellations, and you know what I'm saying? Does everything just kind of shift with us?
Yeah. It's a really good point. There are a lot of answers. There are a lot of answers that I have, and I honestly don't have an answer to this one. I mean, I haven't yet shifted to become a fourth dimensional person. I've been told a variety of facts that tell me it's going to be different in a number of ways, but I haven't asked about whether our night skies are going to look different, other than the fact that Tacoma and Nihohia are going to be coming through here sometime and settling somewhere near Venus. But I haven't asked that question about will our night skies look any different. I will ask. I'll ask, and I'll post the answer on the frequently asked questions page.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you, caller. We appreciate it. All right, Tolec. Looks like we have about, 25 minutes left?
Okay. Vanessa, do you have any questions or anything that you'd like to discuss?
Yes, I actually did have a question.
Jump on in.
When we've been talking about ego versus spirit, and when we ascend to the fourth dimension or shift, what types of things are going to be different? Will we still have that separate ego and spirit, or will they be merged together?
Okay. I think I understand the question you're asking. I'm not sure, but I'll give it a shot. Let me try this differently. Each of us will still be human beings. We will be a higher vibrational human being, but we'll still be human beings, and therefore we will still have personalities. We will still have families, husbands, wives, kids. We'll send the kids off to their grandparents. We'll send them off to school. They'll learn for a number of years. There will be different aspects of our lives that will be possible because of new technology that we've never been able to use before. But I'm not sure that I understand how you're using the word ego. But if it's about personality, we're still have personalities. We're still going to laugh and smile, and we'll still feel moments of sadness. The full range of human emotion, because we will have been 3D humans at one point in time. But everything that I've learned about fourth dimensional humans is that their emotional states are much more balanced and not as erratic. Now,
so going back to what you had mentioned before with your story, and what we're all struggling with currently in 3D is releasing and letting go of the negatives and transmuting. Is that still going to be something that has to be done in the fourth dimension?
That's a good question. Okay, the best way I can answer the question is the following. I know that Azar, who's the chief medical officer responsible for all 12 Andromeda Council biospheres, as well as, and we're talking about responsible for healthcare matters, including Joe's clinic up there, I'm sure someday. Including the 6, if you will, hospital ships, because that's the best way I can say it. 6 of the 12 Andromeda Council biospheres are dedicated to healing of fourth dimensional people. Now, I'm going to get more specific. How do fourth dimensional people experience healing? Well, when there have been, let's call them stresses on a fourth dimensional person's body, their energy pattern will be a little bit weakened. And so there are specific modalities of sound, light, frequencies, vibrations, and different tones, and colors as well, and different tones of all of those that Azar will have available to all of the people who want to make use of them. And I don't know exactly how they work, but I know that they're there to help people and to do whatever healing that they need to do, to whatever degree that they need to heal. But again, We're talking about a fine matter essence human body, not organic. That's part A of the answer. Part B of the answer is people who have decided to stay on Earth and they were 3D and they're like, I don't know, I don't understand all this stuff. I don't know how, but I'm here. Me and my family, we're going to stay, and we're going to become fourth dimensional people. Bang. Next morning, the fourth dimensional, we're like, holy, what just happened to me and my wife? We don't understand this. Well, there are people who are emotional and spiritual counselors that are on these 6 hospital ships, these 6 biospheres, that will help the people who are having more of a challenging time to understand what their new fourth dimensional life will be like, to help them understand what these new fourth dimensional capabilities are all about. That's the best answer. That's the best set of answers I can give you to what I think your question is. If I haven't answered your question, you can ask it again. Feel free.
No, you answered it. Thanks.
Okay, cool. Good. Joe?
All right. Well, for the listeners out there, I'm going to pose a few questions for you.
Sure.
One, I suppose if there is a telepathic communication within the 4D realm, and I believe there is.
Yeah.
This would allow for maybe an easier relationship as far as husband and wife. I mean, right now we have to truly guess or hope that the other person is being honest with us or themselves. Or themselves even when we communicate in the 3D realm. So when we transcend into a higher dimension, how do you see, because basically we're talking about what's the difference between 3D reality, ego versus spirit, compared to 4D ego. And when we're talking about ego, we're talking about the ego mind, because we're talking about the human experience, which is mind or ego mind, body, spirit, and the emotional body. So that's the questions that we keep posing, just to clarify.
Well, I'm chuckling because, with all due respect to all of the wonderful women in the world, every once in a while, all of us guys stand there scratching our heads going, what did she really mean by that question? There we go. And so, you know what? The answer to us standing there scratching our heads is to look at our girlfriends or wives and go, honey, is this what you meant by this statement? And she'll go, no, I was asking this. And you go, okay, all right, that's a different story, and you continue on. But the best thing that we can do whenever those of us male dogs are confused is to ask a question of our female counterparts and get a new question that will clarify the issue that she was addressing. Now, will I think that telepathy will help some of that? I hope so. Men are still men and women are still women, and keep in mind, we are shifting gears. In some ways, we're like a bicycle, and we're going to go from like third gear to fourth, but we're bringing all of our 3D experiences. So we men may be scratching our heads for a little while. But yeah, I do think, in all seriousness, I do think that fourth dimensional life with telepathy will enable us to communicate a lot faster with everybody. And of course, we're going to have to learn how to respect other people's space. I was talking about a subject similar to this one time, and this guy was saying, well, how do you keep the noise out? I went, listen. You're in business, right? Guys, like, yeah. I said, okay, so you're there with your business partner, and you're in a restaurant having a meeting with 2 or 3 other guys at a table in a restaurant full of people at lunchtime, and there are all these conversations going on around you, right? He's like, yeah. I said, don't you filter all those conversations out and you just focus in on what you guys are saying at the table? He's like, yeah. I said, well, same thing. You just engage your brain to filter out, if you will, all of the background noise of the other people who are talking, and just focus in on the person or persons that you want to be talking to. Same scenario, not really any different. Yeah.
Cool.
So he went, okay. It was easy.
Hey, we have another caller. If you're, we've got 15 minutes left, so if you're open, okay.
Roman.
Caller with area code 805, welcome to A Guiding Light.
Thank you. I have 3 quick questions, and then I'll hang up and take the answers off the air. The first question is it your understanding, Tolec, that in this solar system it's just planet Earth that's going to evolve into the 4th and 5th dimension, or is it the whole solar system and or beyond that's going to make that evolution? The second question is, you mentioned about the 50% of the population, perhaps, give or take, needing to continue on in the school of 3D, and I was just wondering how you understand that they will be moving on in that direction. Is it through what we currently call the death of the physical body, or are there other ways too? And the last question is, you mentioned that some things still need to take place before we can make this shift. Obviously, what the Andromeda Council and the people of Procyon have been doing in ridding the planet of the reptilians and so forth has been a major part, and I'm wondering if, in your view, the whole matter that so many of us have heard about upcoming mass arrests and a change in the financial system and government, etc., worldwide, if you see that as a necessary part of what needs to take place first also. And I'll hang up now. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Hey, Joe, do you want to grab another 2 hours?
We got 13 minutes. Make it quick.
Oh, man. Here we go. Last question first. I believe that there will continue to be a number of that will take place, that will manifest, change themselves on this planet, having to do with our society, our banking system, the way it works today as compared to how it's going to be in the future. There will be a transition. Things have to change, simply because the current system is collapsing as we speak. So there will be a new system that will be in transition for a number of years. That's question C. Question B, having to do with people that will choose to instead prefer to continue a three-dimensional life, like all of us are having today. I'm going to provide an illustration, a visual illustration, so people will understand my answer completely. Think of a pinwheel. You know, the pinwheels, I think most people know what a pinwheel exists. So the Milky Way galaxy, think of it as a pinwheel that's laying down, and it's got all of these pinwheel arms. Well, our solar system and planet Earth sits on a pinwheel arm that's, if you will, also called a spiral arm, at like around 7 o'clock on a clock face. Somewhere up around 10 o'clock, there's another version 3D world. We'll call it Terra Nova. I don't know what its name is, but we'll call it Terra Nova. People who are three-dimensional humans today that don't want to stay here and don't want to become fourth-dimensional, they will be able to, if you will, hop a ferry. In this case, it'll be a large biosphere. And again, this is a completely voluntary decision. Those people that want to go, they can. And the trip will take like 10 to 12 years of travel time to get from where we are at Earth today to this new virgin Earth-like world up at around 10 o'clock on a clock face in the Milky Way galaxy. It is a virgin world. I could get into all of the aspects of the do's and don'ts about this world. I won't, except to say that there are conditions, and the conditions the Andromeda Council people are laying down are the following. There will be no littering, trash, abuse of the planet, dumping toxins or waste into the planet that people have done to Earth. That won't be allowed. There's also going to be, if you will, this 10 to 12 years of travel time, transition time, to educate the people that will be traveling on this biosphere, to give them a chance to learn what this new world is going to be like, to learn what the natural resources of this new world are going to be like, and also to learn what kind of new technologies they will have as three-dimensional people, and specifically what kind of new clean and or green technologies they'll have as three-dimensional people to have a happy, fulfilling life on this new planet. Answer A. Yes, this solar system and this planet and all of the planets in this solar system are going to be bumping up one vibrational level. For Earth, it's essentially going to be to the mid-level of the fourth density or dimension. I don't live on any of the other planets, so I can't claim to know exactly what's going to happen to every other planet, except to say that they will bump up one level in vibration. 2, I've learned recently, just in the past week and a half, that there are other solar systems in the Milky Way galaxy that have three-dimensional, 3D planets just like Earth. That number is in the thousands. Now, they're far away from us as we would measure them, but that number is in the thousands. Some of them are going to go through the shift a little bit before us. I'm using a time reference now, sorry. Some are going to go through that shift a little bit before us. Some are going to go through the shift the same time we are. And there's another batch just in back of us that are all going to go through the shift at relatively the same time. So if you will, groups A, B, and C, a little before, at the same time, and a little later. Thousands of 3D planets all making the evolutional shift up in vibration. I heard that. I was like, wow. So this is clearly a time of evolutional magnitude, to quote the line from that movie, in the history of histories. Now, this is like the story of not only the millennium, but the story of thousands and thousands and thousands of years of not only this planet's blueprint, but other planets and other solar systems' blueprint. This is the time to evolve. I'm done.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
okay.
That's the answer. Yeah.
Well, I think we've taken up enough of your time. We went over by a lot here, but we had lots of callers on, and I think we got to the last one. And there's like 7 minutes left. But what I'd like to thank you again for being on the show. I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure you answered everybody's questions. And if not, maybe you could give out your information, like your website or your contact information, so people can at least write in and ask any further questions.
Sure. The website is Andromeda Council. In this case, council is COUNCIL. So AndromedaCouncil.com. The only way to contact me is through the YouTube channel messaging service. And you can write to me at Tolec, Tolec, from Dakote, Dakote. And I answer hundreds of questions every single week. I do want to reach out and say thank you to people who have listened to my plea for help in going through the Andromeda Council's website first, especially the first page where I post some updates, but especially the last page of the frequently asked questions. A lot of the things that we talk about here and that I've addressed in other interviews, I'm posting on that frequently asked questions page. And my now constant 11-hour days are backing down to about 9.5 hours. So I'm not getting flooded with as many questions because people are choosing to go through the website and read a lot first. And it's a long-winded way of me saying thank you for doing your research first, because it helps me. And I also want to thank the people that are reaching deeper and asking more nuanced questions, because I'm watching this happen. I'm watching the level of the questions evolve, and people are reaching down 2 to 3 layers below what the obvious answers are. And it's good to see those questions coming in. I don't always know all of the answers, but I do my best to answer as accurately as possible. That's my job, and I want to keep doing it as long as I can.
All right, wonderful. If you ever have time in the near future, I don't know what your plans are or anything like that, but I guess we'll get together maybe after the show and discuss if you're going to be able to come back or not. But you're obviously welcome to come back if you so choose, and if it's something you want to do.
Well, Joe, with you, anytime. You know, it's always a pleasure. Vanessa, I hope that I help answer your questions completely in terms of what you were asking. Okay, all right, good. I just, it's just part of who I am. It comes from my operations background. I don't ever want to drop the ball, and if I do, I want to make sure that I can pick it up again and make sure that I answer appropriately. So I'm glad I was able to help.
All right, thank you again, and like I said, I'll get with you, and hopefully we can get you back next Sunday if you have time, but I don't want to promise the listeners right now, but we'll talk about it after the show.
Sounds good. Joe,
right.
Vanessa, thanks again. It was a pleasure. This was a great show. I was able to touch on and clarify some concepts, like those differences between ego and personality and spirituality, and set definitive borders as to what they really are. And I hope, to whatever degree I explained them, I hope that they helped everybody out there that was listening.
I'm sure they did. And thank you again.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Good night, Vanessa. Take care.
Thanks.
Good night.
All right. Bye, Joe.
Okay. So let's see here. Again, thank you, Tolec, and thank you to all the callers. Thank you to my lovely host here. One last reminder for everybody out there to have a happy Mother's Day. Of course, there's not much time left here in this time zone, but there are other time zones out there. And also, don't forget to maybe go out into nature and take your shoes off and plant your feet into the grass or the earth and send Mother Earth some healing energy to her atmosphere, her oceans, and down into her crystalline core to assist her and all of us in this transformation and this transcendence. Next week, Sunday, May 20th, Alfred Weber and I will be discussing what many find as flaws within the current system, including medicine, the legal system, and education, to name a few. What if there was an alternative means of education that addressed all of these factors? What if there was a university that had open enrollment to everyone on this planet? Tune in as we discuss the possibilities. Until next time, I'm Dr. Marra.
And I'm Vanessa De Silva.